nations, a campaign that says hands off. It's like it's a final day. You just can't ignore this, isn't it?
Absolutely. You can't. It's something we have to pay attention to. Even though, like President Ramaphosa said, what happens in America happens in America, and we should leave America to deal with it.
Well, as you know, it's not quite as simple as that, isn't it? The impact is felt throughout the world. What is the issue? I mean, there's groups of people. I understand, like over 500,000 people,
Hmm.
and maybe even more around the 50 states of the USA, in coordinated campaigns. Right? What were they asking for, and what is the thrust of hands off?
Well, the major thing that's driving it now is it's just like the name of the protest says, hands off. Their jobs, hands off social security, hands off. Established privileges and benefits that Americans have had, over the years. That's what they are complaining about. Many of these people are, both Republicans and Democrats and independents, many of who voted for Trump, are very unhappy with job losses that have come out of his executive orders that place so much powers in the hands of Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency that have cut jobs, fired people, without process, and leaving many in dire straits and uncertainties.
Mm. And who coordinated this? Because there's lots of discussion about who are these groups of people, and what is their actual angle.
Well, I think they're just a group of Americans that are bound by, discontentment with and dissatisfaction with what is happening. They see it as it's actually organized by a pro-democracy movement, and I've couched it in that light of, a fight for democracy to prevent the hostile takeover of America, and prevent the attack on American rights and freedom. That's how the organizers have framed this. But it is appealing, like I said, to a broad base of Americans who are suffering, from the current policies, directives, especially through executive orders of President Trump.
How would these people be suffering from Donald Trump's executive policies, keeping in mind that these are people within the USA as opposed to, for example, South Africans?
Well, those within the USA are those, like I said, who had who have lost their jobs, right? There are those whose social security benefits are being threatened. There is talk about, slashing or cutting Medicaid, the Obamacare, which benefits a lot of people, and of course there are also those that are concerned about, freedoms, basic freedoms of speech and association and expression. There are those who are concerned about the deportation of people who are in the country legitimately. So it's a lot of people with different interests, a mixed potpourri, if you like, of different groups, different individuals, that are affected broadly by one way or another by some of the actions that have been taken. Also, not forgetting that there are also those who feel that there's been too much attention on foreign policy, without looking at basic issues of the economy that made many of them to vote for the president in the first place. I mean, the basic cost of living is still as high as it was in the last quarter of 2024. People are groaning from all of this, and you heard reports of the president going on to play golf during the weekend while these protests were taking place just after he announced his Liberation Day America.
Mm. What? So after all this happened, what happens next? I mean, did the president respond at all to it? Has anybody responded that suggests they may be open to listening to these conversations, or in fact shrugging it off completely as some sort of a sinister campaign?
There's not been much any response from Trump or any of his officials, but there have been a few representatives, House of Representative members that welcome them in D.C. and in the different states. But most of these are Democrats, and sometimes it makes you wonder whether it will not therefore be framed as an opposition organizing, against the ruling party, if you like. However, we know that it's actually much more. The movement is much more broad based than limited to any particular party.
Mm. And when we say any reaction, I mean, did the markets move? Because often what happens, and has happened last week already around the tariff issues, the markets had an impact in terms of wiping out billions of rands, or in this case, dollars of the major stock exchanges from around the world.
Yeah, well, the movement was essentially after he announced the reciprocal tariff regime. That's when the movement happened. There's not been much movement in the market since the protest started over the weekend. Maybe we'll see what happens today. But so far, there's not been much movement in the market apart from what happened with the reciprocal tariffs.
Yeah. Does this tell us that, that America is far more divided than has been let out to be in the last few months?
Oh, well, America has been divided, has been very polarized, and it's strictly been, along the party lines, Democrats and Republicans. However, I think that there is reason to believe that you may see people unifying across party lines, because of what many perceive as hard knocks that they've taken as a result of Trump's policies, and the questions around whether that's what they actually voted for. And the answer is no. There's been interviews of several people who voted for him and are expressing regret for that right now. So maybe it is a turning point that can begin to make them ask basic questions around who they are as Americans, what binds them, and maybe exploring those opportunities for change rather than stoking the embers of divisions, as has been the case in the last 10, 20 years.
I see a Democratic Party representative spoke about Trump, saying he's got the politics of Mussolini and the economic policies of Herbert Hoover, right? What do we make of that? I mean, and as you answer that, is this an opportunity for the Democratic Party that lost that last election to try and create an early fight back, considering they've been effectively not just sidelined, but shut out of the national discourse in the last few weeks or months?
Well, I think that many have undermined the impact of culture in all of this, and I think that that's what is driving, well, maybe the populist aspect of what Trump is doing. So it's going to remain a question of whether Americans return to the fundamental principles that define their constitution, or whether they would want a Republican state where the state is all powerful and people's rights and freedoms get squashed. I think it's going to be a moment of reckoning for many Americans to come out and either decide for themselves whether they go back to the original intention of the framers of the American Constitution, and what it meant by the preamble of we the people, whether where sovereignty lies, or whether it is with powerful political operators who would decide for them what they should want.
Just lastly, where do you think all this will end?
Well, it's difficult now to I don't see what the big picture is for Trump and his MAGA movement. What the real big picture is in terms of where they are going with all of this. There's been talk about Trump floating the idea of a possible third term. Who's going to resist that? Will it be the Republicans? Will it be the courts? And there's this tension now between himself and Chief Justice Roberts that has stalled for some time now. Look, American civilization and what it has sold to the world that has kept it as world leader is currently at stake. We will just need to wait and see how institutions, civil society groups, and like we're seeing with this pro-democracy movement and other institutions of states that held out in the first Trump era, whether they will be able to do the same, or the issue of cultural ideation would actually hold out and preserve the America as we've always known it.
Okay, that's where we can leave it. Appreciate your time, Professor Chris Ezike, who's the Professor of African Politics and International Relations at the University of Pretoria. So what do you make of what's happening in the USA? What do you make of this movement? Because really that's what it is, hands off to Trump, about handing, not just him, Elon Musk as well, about keeping their hands off a whole range of important issues, including the issue of their attacks on, what they would call about foreign nationals, and many other things as well. And it's an interesting one, but very significantly, they talk about the billionaire takeover of the USA. Right, what about who owns South Africa, and what happens next? Is it the GNU? How much power do they have? We'll talk about that next.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matriek mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
The Saints are pumped up to fight even harder in search of 3 points on home ground.
And Smallbone has scored his first Premier League goal. Liverpool stood like statues.
Meanwhile, the Villains are chasing a win to secure a decent top half spot.
Tielemans to Rashford. Rashford fires it in. Oh, it's got in! It's turned over by Marco Asensio again. 2 from him, 2 for Aston Villa, and 3 points surely.
This is the Premier League. Experience the thrilling encounter between Southampton FC and Aston Villa FC on Saturday, 12 April at 3:30 p.m. live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
April is Freedom Month, a month to reflect, celebrate, and move forward. SAFM is bringing you powerful stories, insightful debates, and voices that shape our nation. Stay tuned to SAFM, where freedom, history, and the future meet. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
I tell you what, besides you, talking about your favorite sports team over the weekend, which is completely understandable because that's what most people do anyway, right? The biggest game of them all has got to be the GNU, and it's understandable, therefore, if many people have been talking about just how long will this GNU survive. Is this journey going to continue, or are we going to come to an abrupt end? Richard Callan is with me, the adjunct visiting professor at the Wits School of Governance, as well as the director of the Africa program of the Cambridge Institute of Sustainability and Leadership. Richard, appreciate your time, and thanks for connecting to us here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you doing?
I'm very good indeed. I suppose the most fundamental question of all, and there's really nothing else to it, is, are we seeing the end of the GNU, or is this merely the beginning of the type of early pains that the GNU has, and we may see a more mature GNU down the line?
Yeah, I don't think anyone can reasonably predict the outcome and therefore directly answer your question. What I can tell you is that whereas on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday last week, I think this thing was dead and buried, almost, now we're in a position where life is being sucked back into the body of the GNU in its current form, meaning the DA's participation and inclusion in that government of national unity. So there's life in the old dog yet, and that is resuscitation process has happened because I think the adults in the room on both sides have realized that actually there's a bigger game at stake here, to use your metaphor. and there are bigger stakes that need to be taken into account. And I think a combination of wise heads on both sides, cooler heads on both sides, and some external pressure from people like the CEOs group that wrote to the leaders of both parties towards the end of last week. All of that has combined to stall the divorce proceedings, as it were. And what you've got now is the start of what I hope, being an optimist, will prove to be a much more meaningful negotiation that will lead to a much more solid agreement between the two parties.
So when you say the wise heads in the room, I mean, who are these wise heads? Because I don't know.
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, both the DA and the ANC are quite divided on this topic. They were divided back in May, June last year. It wasn't easy for both parties. There were people on the ANC side who said, over my dead body, the DA, and there were people on the DA side who said, why are we keeping those rascals in power, so to speak? And so it was a battle. But in the end, as I argued in my Sunday Times piece, what prevailed last year in June was a sense that actually it's much better to deal with a partner who is, you may not love them, but you can trust them sufficiently for them to be a dependable partner in government. And back to something else you said in your intro about the kind of fork in the road here. Now, it is, optimistically speaking, it could be the start of resetting how this power sharing arrangement works, and recognizing that it's not easy, recognizing that these sorts of relationships require work. There's going to be ups and downs. You've got to ride that wave, and you've got to find basically a new political culture. Sharing power is not easy. It's much easier to have a majority, like the ANC used to have. It's much easier to be in opposition, like the DA used to be. To share power together is not straightforward, and I think there was a lack of care last year given to the fundamentals, the foundation stones of the relationship. There wasn't enough social capital built between the people. There wasn't the commitment to process, no adequate conflict resolution mechanisms, and so on. And ultimately, then you've got to build something that's much more sturdy.
Mm. You mentioned the CEOs, and that would refer to a specific group of people, because there's been a lot of talk about, and it's been used very, very loosely about, business effectively forcing a resolution here. So, I mean, when we talk about business forcing a resolution, effectively telling both the ANC and the DA that, hey, come on, guys, you just have to come together, otherwise the economy will absolutely plummet. I mean, who are these business people? Do they belong to a grouping of people, or are they individuals? And what power do they have?
Look, that's a fair question. And of course, it's lazy to talk about business because it's not a single body. There are, of course, different parts of the private sector. I think in this case, what we're talking about are the kind of the senior CEOs who are leading figures in major sectors such as mining, finance, banking, telecommunications, healthcare, and so on. And people who together constitute a very significant part of the South African economy. They've got a stake in this, absolutely, and they shouldn't be shy. I've always said to businesses that are serious about the economy and serious about democracy, they have every right to have their voice heard, providing, of course, they are acting with integrity. I believe, as far as I know, the CEOs we're talking about here are people who do care about the health of the country. And the reason they came together last week and wrote that letter and sent it through a proper channel, which was a business government channel that's well established, is because they respected that process, but they also wanted to have their voice heard because they were deeply concerned about the impact. And we've already seen it. And of course, it's slightly caught up in the tariff stuff from President Trump. But nonetheless, it's quite clear that there was local political stuff that influenced the way in which markets were reacting last week. So it's a negative sentiment. And it's not unreasonable as well, Ashraf, I would argue, because I think the view that's taken about the DA is that the DA is a serious partner in government. You might not always agree with them, but they're a serious partner, and they support the Constitution and the rule of law. And the alternative to the DA, and this is what prevailed last year on both sides, the alternative would be much worse for everybody concerned.
Well, now, interesting, Paul Mashatile, and he's not just anybody, he's the deputy president of the African National Congress, right? Which means he could well be a president of the country if Ramaphosa is not there on a given day, right? I mean, he's been talking today, and he said, and I'm quoting him, that if he was a DA minister, he would be ashamed to continue working after voting against the budget. I mean, what do you make of that? Because that goes against the grains of everything you've just said in terms of the really serious people in the room.
Yes, I noted what Deputy President Mashatile said, and to be frank with you, Ashraf, it's not a particularly helpful comment. At a time when you're looking to kind of calm the game and get serious politicians in a room to privately negotiate and discuss the future, it's not really helpful to have that kind of grandstanding outside of that room in the public domain. It suggests to me that individual has an ulterior motive, that he either is dead set against the GNU, or he sees an opportunity to advance his own factional interests. And that's, of course, the complexity here, the political complexity, and the leaders of the parties have to deal with that. That's politics, that's natural. But therefore it's going to require real leadership, as it did last May, June. So I expect President Ramaphosa to have to deal with this. It will be not straightforward for him. But over the course of the next few days, starting with the National Working Committee today of the ANC, some kind of special NEC is likely to be called, I think. He will have to tactically handle it in his normal fashion. And ultimately, he's going to have to make a judgment call of his own, which is, does he believe that the country and his government is better served by keeping the DA in or not?
And maybe as the last thing as we get to the news now. So let's look at two scenarios. A South Africa without the DA in the GNU and a South Africa with the DA in the GNU, as has been the case for the better part of just almost a year. How will those two scenarios play out for our country?
Well, let me take the second first, which is, to my mind, the higher road scenario. In that scenario, both sides come to their senses. They learn the art of coalition politics in a more serious fashion. They build a more sturdy foundation. They compromise, and they recognize that compromise is essential to power sharing. And they get used to all of that. And they build a new culture of government and a new culture of politics. That's that scenario. And it won't be straightforward, but it will be the better scenario. The alternative one, which is what we've begun to see in the last few days, is where the ANC says, no, we can manage without the DA. We've got the numbers, and we can cobble together the arithmetic to get most things over the line. That is inherently less stable. It's inherently more dependent on smaller parties who are often highly unreliable partners in government, who can, as we've seen in local government, in the city of Johannesburg, for example, you end up with a very small sparrow or rat, depending on how you want to couch it, being the kingmaker, which can lead to some really strange and unfortunate outcomes. So those, I think, are the two broad scenarios.
And of course, we will tackle all those scenarios and more as and when they develop or unfold. Richard Kellen, appreciate you giving off your time. The high road of the GNU and the low road of the GNU. Which ones would you choose and how do they play out? Richard, appreciate your time. As you listening in, well, you can call in. We'll take your calls, WhatsApp, voice notes, and text as soon as we can. Let's get to the news headlines now. Here's Kolofelo Tefu.
Thanks, Ashraf. In the headlines this hour, Minister of Electricity Kgosian Tshorama says the rising costs of energy generation and production by Eskom for the past 20 years is one of the contributing factors to electricity tariff increases. Deputy President Paul Mashatile says clarity on the future of the Government of National Unity should emerge by the end of today. This as the ANC's National Working Committee meets to discuss the next steps after the DA voted against the 2025 fiscal framework for the national budget. And further afield, French President Emmanuel Macron says that France and Egypt condemned Israel's recent action on the Gaza Strip. He was speaking in Cairo at a joint media briefing with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Details at 4.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 northbound in Bedford View is slow moving on the link to the N12 East at Kiluli's interchange. The M2 westbound in Crown has delays towards Main Reef Road, and the N1 southbound in Grasmere has delays approaching the engine services. In KZN, on the R102 in Port Shepstone, it's closed at Umzimkhulu River Bridge. This is until September. Bayhead Road is slow moving through Bayhead, and Old North Coast Road is closed just north of Columbine Place. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound slow moving towards Crombom Road exit, the M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and the N1 outbound slow moving towards Okavango Road. With your traffic updates, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, to me, let's talk about what I call it, the gents, right? The young lighties, Amajimbos.
Absolutely. A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Starting off with football, Bafana players, Deborah Mokwena and Aubrey Mudiba, amongst others, have joined the country in congratulating Amajimbos who have qualified for the Under-17 World Cup in Qatar later this year, despite losing 2-0 to Burkina Faso in the Under-17 Africa Cup of Nations yesterday. South Africa will be one of the 8 African sides at the Junior Football Global Showpiece, and it's all thanks to Egypt, who beat Cameroon to help South Africa finish second in Group B. Meanwhile, head coach Vela Khumalo says that it's back to the drawing board so that they're all set for the quarterfinals.
We'll go back and strategize and plan thoroughly, but we will take this as part of practice, and we want to go through and through. Let's see how it goes, but I'm excited, I'm happy.
Meanwhile, Southampton have parted ways with manager Ivan Juric. This is following their relegation to the Sky Bet Championship. Juric leaves after the Saints relegation was confirmed yesterday, just lasting 108 days in charge and losing 12 out of 14 top-flight games. And Simon Rusk will take over as Southampton's interim manager, with Adam Lallana named as his assistant. Elsewhere, with Liverpool now sitting 11 points clear at the top of the Premier League table after losing for the second time this season yesterday, 3-2 to Fulham. The big question now is how soon can the Reds win the title? Well, the earliest date can be on the 20th of April by beating Leicester City, and for that to happen, Liverpool must win their next match against West Ham on the 13th of April, while Arsenal need to lose their next 2 matches at home to Brentford next week and Ipswich Town on the 20th of April. Moving on to cricket. Cricket South Africa has awarded 18 national contracts and 2 hybrid contracts, which will run from the 1st of June 2025 to the 31st of May 2026. With the introduction of hybrid contracts, David Miller and Rassie van der Dussen will be contracted to play in specific bilateral tours and the ICC events. Meanwhile, the Momentum Multiply Titans have appointed Ravesh Gobind as the new head coach on a 3-year contract. And in swimming, it's all about rising stars at this week's SA Senior National Swimming Championships in Gqeberha, with notable absences of icons Tatiana Smith and Chad le Clos. Smith retired from the sport, while le Clos is taking an extended break to recover from injury. This will be for the first time in 20 years that he won't be competing, although he'll be on the pool deck offering encouragement to those who are. Then in rugby, the Bulls will face Edinburgh in the EPCR Challenge Cup quarter-final in the Scottish capital on Saturday. Edinburgh booked their place by ousting the Lions on Friday night, while the Bulls beat Bayonne in an epic performance in front of a highly partisan crowd. Then in golf, England's Mimi Rhodes grateful for claiming the 2025 Joburg Ladies Open trophy at the Modderfontein Golf Club yesterday. Rhodes overcame a strong challenge from South Africa's Cassandra Alexandra to close off with a top score of 7-1 on 14 under par.
I just didn't think ahead and focused on my pace, on my walk, and made sure I didn't get faster to try and get it over and done with. And I just tried to stay patient, honestly.
And then, Ashraf, finally, in my most valuable player of the
I forgot about all that, man. Yeah.
For me today, it has to be Gerda Steyn, claiming her 6th title of the Two Oceans Ultramarathon. She ran that 56 kilometer in 3 hours and 29.10 seconds.
She's quite the legend. So she's won 6. Is it 6 on the trot now?
6 on the trot, yeah.
And the comrades?
In terms of the comrades, I think she's sitting on 2, if I'm not wrong.
Okay, but I mean, she's not stopping. Because you'd have in the past, some people would run the comrades, but not the Two Oceans because of the impact that it has on their bodies, right? And she does both.
Yeah, and she's doing well, and it seems like she keeps going, even though she wasn't able to better her record from the previous time. Fact of the matter is, it's the 6th title of the Two Oceans, and she still says she wants more this year.
Well, look, you know what? She's an absolute champion, and you know what? What she does, not just does, but must inspire all of us to be best in class in what we do, right? Because I mean, she's best in class in what she does. So fantastic, and it shows you it's possible. So yeah, there you are, your MVP, uncontested, undisputed MVP for the week.
Do you have?
No, no, that's going to be your choice.
Were you not watching sports this week that you like?
I watched a bit of it, but not enough for me to be authoritative on it like you. You're the sports authority. Let me take a back seat on this one. Yeah. Okay.
Switch to stream with SABC Plus. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime. 0 subscription fees. Download SABC Plus on Android or iOS and watch the Betway Premier Soccer League, the English Premier League, and the Bundesliga live. You can also catch up with Uzalo, Skim Sam, Generations on demand and listen to your favorite radio stations live. Ukhozi, Umhlobo Wenene, Radio 2000 and 5FM, all for free. Switch to stream with SABC Plus now. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime with SABC Plus.
At Duvet Tradeport, we specialize in helping businesses grow through state-of-the-art manufacturing, infrastructure, logistics services, and international trade links. We're an advanced environment for doing business where most ambitious companies gather. If you're seeking progressive opportunities and looking to build mutually beneficial relationships, move to duvettradeport.co.za to see your business grow beyond potential.
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the international friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
April is Freedom Month, a month to reflect, celebrate, and move forward. SAFM is bringing you powerful stories, insightful debates, and voices that shape our nation. Stay tuned to SAFM, where freedom, history, and the future meet. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Hi, I'm Zycard. Catch me every Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m. on Spotlight as we bring you blow-by-blow sporting action, news. That's Spotlight every Saturday. You don't want to miss it.
Okay, now, you wouldn't want to pay more than you need to for your cell phone bill, do you? So why overpay for car insurance? Switch to Outsurance, and you could save big money, well, every month. Jermaine, a 43-year-old man, is a real Outsurance client who saves a whopping 360 Rand a month on his 2021 Mazda 3.3 1.5 Dynamic. Now, that's what I call a real deal. Why pay more? Switch and save today. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
I'll tell you what, one of the things, if you want to know like what the world is thinking, is look into, what marketing and trends related companies and organizations do, because in terms of their think tanks and what they deliver, gives you a good sense of where the world is actually going. I would think to a large degree that's the case with the Yellowwood Chief Strategy Officer at TBWA Huntless Cars. I'm talking about Lesego Kotane, because they've put together an insight called around cultural relevance that we need to be talking about. Lesego, I appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Thanks, Ashraf, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Thank you. So tell me about this insight that you want to share, which is called, is it the Edges Report, right?
Yes, it's called the Edges Report, and it's one of our kind of proprietary trend reports that we look at from a TBWA worldwide perspective that kind of seeks to just understand what is happening around the world and what are some of the major shifts that we're seeing play out in culture and with consumers that can have an impact on brands and businesses.
Okay, I suppose you have the answers, and as you give us the answers, be aware that the president of South Africa or the ANC will be listening in. Same with the president of the DA, because they all want answers. And I would assume Donald Trump and his co-president or deputy president Elon Musk will be tuned in as well. Go for it.
Everyone's listening in. Sure. I mean, I suppose that the first thing I should probably do is just start by defining what we see as an edge, or at least how we define it. And these is something that we see as global shifts around the world that show up around the world and that manifest around the world that we think have got scale and longevity to kind of help brands turn that into commercial opportunity. So that's kind of how we define it, and we like to see it sort of defined as something that is connected to kind of true human values and has got like sustained relevance. It isn't just something that passes quickly.
Okay, so give me examples of that.
Yeah, sure. So we've looked at our report this year covers 39 shifts, and it's across a number of areas, from like sustainability to people's relationship with technology to relationship with money and finances. One of our edges, for example, that I think we're also seeing show up even from a South Africa perspective is something that we've called Money Out Loud. And that speaks to how the idea of money and people's relationship with money is almost being taken off the do not discuss list, something that perhaps in society there'd be a lot of taboo around. I think you're seeing a lot more transparency around sort of how people think about money, how people are planning money, how they're talking about money, and transparency around that. So that's an area that we're seeing, I think, sort of a much more honest dialogue around that. And the other thing that I think that we're seeing and that we've sort of called under this edge or this theme that we call crisis hacking, and I think it's probably ever more relevant than now in terms of what's happened in the last in the last week at least, which is just this world that I think consumers are finding themselves under a lot of pressure and dealing with confronted with a lot of crises, whether it's food crises, inflation crises, resource scarcity, and all of these kind of pressures that they're finding themselves in, and they're looking for ways to work themselves out of that, through interesting little lo-fi hacks, or interesting ways that they can almost relieve the pressure that they find on themselves, kind of on a day-to-day basis. So those are just sort of two amongst the 39 that we're seeing coming out,
And I mean, I know one of the things that you picked up and made reference to was that the 2024 word of the year was, I think it's called brain rot. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, brain rot, Oxford's word of the year.
So give us context of what that means in terms of where we're going with the world.
Yeah, I think it was really something that was connected to, I think, the experience that society's just having at large with how, in this digital kind of attention economy that we're living in, so much of what we're being fed is sort of driven by algorithms, and is being driven by sort of mindless, kind of internet scrolling, and that there doesn't seem to be, there's almost a decay in when it comes to originality, newness, kind of new provocative ideas, sort of as we all are just suckered into being fed much of the same, and nothing is kind of bringing new inspiration. So brain rot was sort of Oxford's Oxford's perspective on the year to say, where our brains are kind of just being melded into this world of sort of social media and unstimulating content.
And the report also talks about, the need for brands to transcend something very superficial into something more meaningful. I mean, explain that, because ultimately, I would think that brands, by their very nature, yes, they will be authentic, but they're also trivial, and for some reason, they are able to communicate a message for us to love that what is trivial.
Yes. Well, look, I think the first thing to say is that it's not to say that there's anything wrong with what's trending and what's topical and what is viral, but I think we quite like to take the long view, and I think you sort of, when you start to look at things that are what's trending topics and what's viral, those things are short-lived, and they live and die, on a daily, hourly, or even weekly basis, and so they're fads rather than things of substance, and they play out as content, and so we for us, I think the important distinction is to go, don't conflate what is culture, the things that are long lasting, the things that are of substance, the things that are really meaningful, with the things that are sort of quick passing. And that are more viral in nature rather than more value-based in nature. So I think that's sort of the difference, where brands are obsessing to be kind of ahead of culture, but I think the measurement of that is with things that are less lasting, than sort of true culture when it comes to humanity.
And lastly, on that basis, you also talk about stop following the algorithm, right? What does that really mean at a time when just about everybody's told, understand the algorithm?
Yeah, look, I think, algorithms at their best sort of work by aggregating what hundreds and millions of people are kind of listening to and following to, and it sort of serves, it's serving suggestions. And I think for us, it's just around going, look, that trap leads us to ultimately going to the same kind of places, following the same types of sources, looking at the same areas and spaces of inspiration. And by implication, what you end up finding is ultimately, if we're all fed the same things, the result is that we churn out the same types of things. So now, if you consider the world of consider how perhaps things start to look the same, start to feel the same, design aesthetic starts to look the same. Shows on TV start to kind of blend into each other. And so, and that's because, data is feeding us, or rather this kind of algorithmic machine is feeding us what people are liking and what people are not liking. And I think we're sort of saying, rise above that, really get into more kind of truer human values. What are people really meaningfully wanting to connect to? Add new ideas into society. That can create conversations of their own.
All right, that's where we leave it. Lesego Kotane certainly got me thinking about many, many things. The MD of Yellowwood and the Chief Strategy Officer at TBWA, Hunt Lascaris. I'm hoping that they can just tweet us some of the information or the links to that report. I think it'll be fantastic if they do just that. Otherwise, you can just Google it and find it. Right, what's important now is, I suppose, in terms of following the algorithm, what about the algorithm of the caller, the listener to the National Pulse? I want to hear what you say.
What is your money doing right now? Is it lazing around in that other account because you're not sure where to move it for premium growth? Well, let's make it work hard in a Standard Bank Money Market Select investment account, where we'll grow it with a nominal interest of up to 7.9% on a minimum deposit of 100,000 Rand. Plus, you get access to your funds anytime. Open yours online or on our app today. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Begin with Buco, and you can hit the road with a brand new trailer. We're giving away 94 trailers nationwide, fully loaded with home building and maintenance supplies to fuel your next project, road trip, or business venture. Spend 1,000 Rand or more in store at Buco. Fill in your entry form and drop it in our competition box. It could be you. Shop, enter, and win with Buco. T's and C's online.
Buco. The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Okay, let's get your calls. I mean, we've touched on 2 or 3 really important issues so far. The issue of the trends, global trends, as per TBWA, right, and the issues of cultural relevance. We've certainly touched on the USA as part of the opening conversation we had, and those mass numbers of protests around the 50 states of the USA, in terms of just hands off a whole lot of things that got many people in South Africa to say, you know what, come on, there are some serious problems in the USA. And then, of course, our own problem, the GNU. So my point, the GNU is in ICU. What's the low road of the ICU and what's the high road of the GNU in ICU? Looking forward to your conversations, right? In Frontline KZN, right, welcome. What's your point?
Good afternoon, my brother Asha. Thank you for taking my call. You see, my brother, when I hear the issue of the GNU, I think of their funders, the opener and the opener MIS, yeah. And when I get to hear about the business interest group, I get to think of Anglo-American. I get to be reminded that one of the book, MC Billionaires, one of the books that was written by Pitut, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the GNU these people are still going to work together because they are controlled by the same people who had funded them. And
Okay.
It's not the first time being forced to work together. It started in 1985.
Okay, but I mean, I can't let you talk for 3-4 minutes.
time.
I mean, you've made your point, and I hear you that they, funded by the same people. So I mean, okay, you've punctuated that in Frontline. Thanks for that. My apology. Just be aware that on this show we don't have a lot of time for long calls, so we have to get to one specific point, right? Okay, Takatayo in the Eastern Cape. Go for it. What's your point?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Thank you.
My point is, Ashraf, I am sorry to specify what the kind of race I am. I'm African. Maybe I can call me Xhosa. Ashraf, it is touching me, Buti, when I hear that most of the black people, they are labeling the DA as the white party. Coming to this thing of the VAT that the DA said, it is going to affect especially the poor people like me. The black people, they said, no, DA is politicking. They are preparing for next year. South African people, I am warning you. We already punished by America because of the other things that were not even benefiting from them. Now we are just making another crack now by trying to sideline the South African party that is registered because of our racism. We as black people, I am boldly saying this thing because it is not. I'm not happy when Ashraf to hear every
But okay,
time when
quickly,
we talk
who's
about
sidelining who here? Just tell me.
No, if we are going to take DA out of the GNU because of their idea that this VAT is going to affect the South African, that is not fair.
Okay, but
It
we
is
don't
their
know it now.
ideology.
I mean, they may themselves take themselves out of the GNU. So it's not like we, as in you and I, decided that, do we? They clearly differ. They differ fundamentally. Whether that's a big enough difference to not be together again, we shall find out, isn't it? Okay, let's leave it at that. Takatayo, thanks for that. Let's get to some of the voice notes, and there's many people sending it. And by the way, if you're a first-time caller, I want to know about it. And if you're a first-time listener, I certainly want to know about it too, right? Either way, like to know so we can welcome you connecting to the National Pulse.
Yeah, good afternoon, Azra. Good afternoon, listeners. Azra, have you heard about this South African farmer who was arrested in Britain for child pornography? Yeah, it's Mr. Mayer, if I'm still correctly. He was arrested, and now the AfriForum is so quiet about that. Why AfriForum is so quiet about that? I'm told it's Mr. Mayer who was arrested for child pornography. Patrick from Soweto.
Okay, and I haven't heard about it, and I'm not too sure what you mean by where's AfriForum in this issue. I think to be fair, if I don't know the circumstances and exactly where, would they? I mean, is he a foreign national? Is he South African, meaning South African born? Is he British citizen now? I don't know. But if somebody else knows more, give us more detail.
Ashraf, good day, man. This is Flores from the beautiful, rainy Western Cape. Wow. Do we need this rain? Yes, of course. But let me tell you, the DA will not divorce the GNU. I think those guys were beginning to get or are comfortable in their ministerial positions. So no, they will not. I think they just try their luck. And ANC better start waking up, because they are not going to be in government come next general elections. Bye-bye.
But if the ANC is not going to be in government, doesn't mean the DA is going to be in government in the next election, isn't it? We don't even know. There's no question if any party gets a 50+1 majority in the next election, that may be considered a big shock. I mean, that's how much they would have to grow to do that.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and the listeners of SFM. I think so this GNU must find a way to ensure that the citizen must see what they voted for. But if you check right now, unemployment is very high in our country. Our roads are not in good condition. Our people, they don't have water. But if you check, DA didn't take part when the budget was passed, which was wrong, because DA is part of GNU. I think so for me, they must sit down to ensure that they have the common goal to ensure that the services are rendered to our people. Because if DA didn't take part, it means that this country, it will go wrong, because they don't want to see this country to feel.
Well, look, it's something, let me put this to you again. The GNU is in ICU. The ANC Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, is suggesting by the end of today we'll know exactly where we stand on that issue. But some of his pronouncements suggested that he's quite happy to walk away from the DA's connection with the GNU. So here's the question. The DA is in ICU, or the GNU is in ICU. What's the high road from that ICU, and what's the low road? You tell me. Let's get the news. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Kolofelo.
Thanks, Ashraf. Top stories. The SAWA Ramokgopa speaks on factors affecting the Eskom tariffs and Macron in Egypt to discuss bilateral ties. Good afternoon. I'm Kolofelo Defo. The rising costs of energy generation and production by Eskom for the past 20 years is one of the contributing factors to electricity tariff increases. That's according to Minister of Electricity and Energy, Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, in a written parliamentary reply to a question by DA Member of Parliament Edwin Bapti. Ramokgopa says in 2014, an Eskom customer using around 800 kilowatt hours per month of electricity paid more than 1,000 rand. He says, however, by last year, the same consumption cost escalated to just under 3,000 rand. In other news, Deputy President Paul Mashatile says clarity on the future of the government of national unity should emerge by the end of today. This as the ANC's National Working Committee meets to discuss the next steps after the DA voted against the 2025 fiscal framework for the national budget. Speaking at the inaugural Ahmed Kathrada Legacy Business Breakfast in Johannesburg, Mashatile says if the DA wants to remain part of the GNU, it needs to support the budget.
Now that they've not voted for the fiscal framework, it set the tone of what they will do with the appropriation bill, division of revenue bill. Those things are still coming. We will work with those who go all the way with us. We need the budget to get South Africa working.
Minister of Public Service and Administration Nkosi Mzamo Buthelezi says peace and security can be achieved in Africa. The continent has had many conflicts in the past, and instability still continues in South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and other parts of Africa. The African Peer Review Mechanism is currently hosting a 2-day summit on how the continent can deal with the issue of governance to prevent conflicts. Speaking at the meeting, Buthelezi said peace can be accomplished through negotiations.
Our decisions have far-reaching impact not on our opponents, but to the honest people on the ground. We will then begin to appreciate, to say, how do we address things better? Because leadership is to minimize conflict. Leadership is about finding peace through negotiation, not to the power of a gun. So that noble idea, that noble goal of silencing gun come 2020 is very, very achievable.
The National Health Department says this year's World Health Day being commemorated today will focus on maternal and newborn health. The day marks the start of a year-long campaign aimed at improving the health and well-being of mothers and newborns globally. According to the department, over 300,000 women lose their lives due to pregnancy or childbirth complications each year, and more than 2 million babies die in their first month. The department spokesperson, Foster Mohale, says several initiatives have been put in place.
The department has introduced a number of initiatives as part of ongoing efforts to curb maternal and child mortality in the country by increasing access to information for mothers during pregnancy and postnatal periods, parents and caregivers regarding early childhood development. These include Mom Connect, a mobile technology which has benefited more than 5 million pregnant women and new mothers through free maternal health messaging via SMS or WhatsApp.
And finally, further afield, French President Emmanuel Macron says that France and Egypt condemn Israel's recent action on the Gaza Strip. He was speaking in Cairo at a joint media briefing with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The two presidents will be joined by King Abdullah of Jordan in an effort to revive the ceasefire in Gaza. Overnight, Israeli airstrikes on Gaza killed at least 20 people. 2 other people, including a journalist, were killed in an airstrike on a media tent near Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. Macron says the strikes have made the situation worse in Gaza.
We condemn the resumption of the Israeli strikes on Gaza. They have dramatically worsened the situation of the civilian population there. We call for the resumption of the ceasefire and the return of all hostages Hamas is holding in Gaza.
The top story this hour, Minister of Electricity Kgosian Tshoramo-Gopa says the rising costs of energy generation and production by Eskom for the past 20 years is one of the contributing factors to electricity tariff increases. Headlines at 4:30 for SFM News. I'm Kolofelo Defo.
In your sports this hour, Riviero vows that Pirates won't back down in title hunt. Brooke named England's new white ball captain, and Singh withdraws from this week's Masters tournament. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N12 westbound in Alberton has a crash reported near the R59 Reading interchange. Main Reef Road westbound in Langlaagte has a crash reported near Industrial Road, and Allendale Road eastbound in Midrand has delays towards Dane Road. In KZN, Old North Coast Road is closed just north of Columbine Place, and Bayhead Road is slow moving through Bayhead. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound queuing towards Hospital Bend. Bakencross Street outbound is slow moving towards the elevated freeway, and Victoria Road outbound slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
So the DA is in let me rephrase. I can't say the DA. The GNU is in ICU. What's the high road from here and what's the low road from here? You tell me. Here's a question, Ashraf. The DA must swallow its pride and reconcile with the GNU partners for the sake of the country. They must never allow the EFF to get into the GNU, otherwise this country will be litter, all in ruins. Sibusiso, Makwala in Mount Frere. But I mean, this is the thing, Sibusiso, we don't know. We know that the GNU, in terms of the DA and the ANC, they disagree over the budget. But does that mean they disagree with everything else? We don't know what they're really thinking, both parties, whether who needs to reconcile one or the other. Well, let's get another perspective, by the way, on the issue of the GNU with Dr. Alex Mashila, who's the SACP Central Committee member and the national spokesperson of the South African Communist Party. Well, Dr. Mashila, appreciate your time. You're connected to the National Pulse.
Good evening to you and to the listeners of the National Pulse.
Thank you so much. Right, I suppose the pulses are racing, understandably, for the better part of the last week or two, right? You have a position and understanding. I'm just picking up what the SACP is saying. The SACP argues that the DA is not a key player in the government of national unity and should be excluded from the coalition, right? So you agree with that statement, that the DA is not a key player of the GNU, really?
It is a statement by the Central Committee, which is the leadership authority of the SACP. It is a response to what the DA would have said earlier. Remember that the DA said in this country at the moment there cannot be a GNU without either the DA or the ANC. In fact, they asserted that the DA can collapse the GNU. What happened last week on Wednesday in Parliament is that a clear lineup of political parties showed that actually the GNU can continue without the DA. It is important for that to be given practical expression, to highlight to the DA that the claim it made that actually the GNU can collapse without it is not backed by the facts that played themselves out in Cape Town when other parties said the government, particularly the National Treasury, must find alternative sources of funding to replace the proposed VAT increase within 30 days. And on the basis of that, supported the fiscal framework that was put before Parliament. When the DA, the MK, and a few others voted against it, the majority emerged. That majority was a critical point of evidence to the DA.
All right, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, and I think your example of the budget, I think, is understandable. But that's the one aspect. That doesn't necessarily mean that the ANC, and I'm going to call it the ANC-DA alliance because of their significance within the GNU, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that they may not agree on 50 other things and that they're not that important to the GNU, because if they're not there, then in effect, there may not be a GNU, then it could be something completely different.
No, it can still be the GNU without them. And remember that the other parties just do not support, they didn't just support the motion to find an alternative to the 0.5% VAT hike as an event. They did so because they are prepared to form part of the governance of this country. They are prepared, they can replace the DA and build a government that will be stable, a government that will not be based on one party saying, give us the Western Cape port, please weaken the labor relations environment for capitalists to deepen worker exploitation in exchange for a VAT increase, please reverse the Expropriation Act, please stop the National Health Insurance Act. So they demonstrated that they were prepared actually to move and ensure that there is governance stability.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. My question is, besides your personal feelings and that of the SACP, in the context of where we are now, how much clout does the SACP have in terms of input within the tripartite alliance regarding the DA? What I'm asking is, can you influence the ANC's decision regarding this? You were not able to do so before, right?
Ashraf, I wish I was speaking, expressing personal views. But under the circumstances, I'm communicating the collective perspective of the SACP. We met with the ANC earlier last month in a bilateral session, and we are looking forward to just not more bilateral sessions with the ANC, but alliance political council meetings. The purpose of these processes of joint alliance consultative sessions is to build consensus. And engagements will definitely lead to consensus on this or one other aspect. And I hope you took into consideration what the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, said on Wednesday when he closed the debate in Parliament. He said the DA cannot vote against the fiscal framework that was proposed, including the a proposal for alternative sources of funds to replace the VAT fund, and after voting against, then go back into government to implement what it voted against. You should appreciate that at least there is a basis or a foundation of a common expression between the ANC and the SACP insofar as that articulation by the Minister of Finance is concerned.
Okay, what do you think is going to happen now? And I understand well, maybe we're not speculating. Maybe your consensus suggests you know more than I do.
Look, there are consultations. We, the SACP, are also working very hard to reach out to our alliance partner, the ANC, and I can tell you that between our senior leaders, there has been an interaction. We will be having an interaction with COSATU leaders, despite the fact that some of the COSATU leaders are members of the SACP Central Committee, and they participated at the SACP Central Committee from Friday to Sunday. But they did so as SACP leaders in their own right. Going forward, there will be bilateral and trilateral sessions between the ANC and COSATU to ensure that we try and reach consensus as required by our protocol in trying to give direction to the country and stabilizing affairs. There is just one question you didn't ask me. I'm requesting to respond to this question because it was a claim by the DA on Saturday that almost 1 trillion rand was wiped out at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange because investors were protesting against the potential exclusion of the DA from the GNU. So those investors and the DA, in other words, were aware that this is a reality that can happen. But the wrong information is that that was because of fears that the DA could be excluded. There is a global environment in terms of which the newly elected president of the U.S. is imposing tariffs right, left, and center, taking decisions that are bringing the global economy in a situation where it could lead to recessions. So countries like South Africa that have an open capital account experience huge flows, whether inflows or outflows of monies, influencing at the end of the day its exchange rate, as the people who control these monies are trying to evaluate where they can move the monies globally insofar as their assessment of potential impacts are concerned. It has little to do with the DA. It is a global phenomenon.
But I think when that story first surfaced, I mean, people were just speculating. It certainly was not a DA position or anybody else's, although I think political parties, I think they probably wish they had that power. Clearly, they don't have that power, and I think your explanation is spot on. And we all know that now. There's so much turmoil happening in the world as a fallout of the decisions being made by Donald Trump and his right-hand man, Elon Musk. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. I'm sure we'll connect sometime soon. Once again, the SACP Central Committee member and the national spokesperson there, Dr. Alex Mashilo. Thank you for your time here on the National Pulse. Right, connect, and maybe what about your responses to that talk? If you're up for it, go for it. The comments about Richard Callan and his thoughts earlier around where he certainly believes that the DA needs to be a part of the GNU, even if you don't agree with them, he believes it's that important. What do you think about that? And are there any other factors around it? I did say earlier on that with regard to that the GNU at this point in time is in ICU, and I'm saying what's the low road from the ICU and what's the high road from the ICU? You tell me what you think. Now, how do you connect? If you're a first-time caller, please let me know. I need to welcome you on board. 0614 104 107 via WhatsApp, text or voice note, but then to call in live, 086 000 2032. And you know, with WhatsApp, it's 30 seconds max, please. But you can also tweet on the X platform. Just tag SFM Radio, tag myself, Ashraf Garda. When you do so, as many people do, don't forget to use that hashtag, which is the National Pulse.
EFC is live this Thursday. From the wilds of Reunion Island and the ancient lands of Zimbabwe, two raging bulls meet for a heavyweight title clash as Elvis Moyo takes on Anthony Morrell. Plus Fahis Jacobs and Sibusiso Sovendile fight for bantamweight gold. EFC 122, live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
April is Freedom Month, a month to reflect, celebrate, and move forward. SAFM is bringing you powerful stories, insightful debates, and voices that shape our nation. Stay tuned to SAFM, where freedom, history, and the future meet. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
In fact, I must say, Jimmy Moyaho does the business show coming up at 6 o'clock, reminding me that DA claimed that they issued a press statement. Of course, I was away on the weekend, saying that business called them. We know about business. I think that's been agreed upon. Business called them to drop them, asking them not to leave the GNU, and suggesting they played that narrative that their absence from the GNU would have a huge impact on, well, not just the GNU, but of course the RAND, our rate of exchange globally, right? So that's one thing that's important. Right, let's get into another issue. I'll take calls from you just as soon as I can. There was an issue this morning that we must talk about, and it's so disturbing, right? Gauteng police are investigating a case of murder after 3 men were shot dead at the Zulu Drive and the Napa Revenue intersection that's in Mafolo in Soweto. Now, why is the big issue? What's the motivation and what's the impact of it all besides the actual loss of lives and therefore the disruption of families? Let's find out more about it with the SABC News reporter Lerato Mokala. Lerato, appreciate your time. You're on the National Pulse.
Good day to the listeners at home.
Good day indeed. Right. That's a terrible story, but tell us more, Lerato.
Yes, what a tragedy. Well, the scene has been cleared here at Mafolo in Soweto, and the bodies of the 3 men have been taken out of the vehicle. However, the vehicle is still at the scene, but the road has been opened for motorists. The 3 men were shot and killed around 8 o'clock day in the morning at the Zulu Street in Soweto. Well, when we arrived at the scene, community members were out in numbers waiting outside, but they did not want to speak to the media, saying that they fear for their lives, and they have expressed shock, saying someone could have been involved in the crossfire, and they've mentioned that they now live in fear because they use taxis to travel to their different destinations, and they're not happy with this war between taxi associations. We couldn't get their reaction on how they felt about the incident, but they raised their concerns about their safety. And we managed to speak with the police as well. Gauteng Police spokesperson Notolo Kweza confirmed that when they arrived there, they found high-caliber cartridges on the scene, implying that suspects may have used larger, powerful guns. And while the motive of the killing is still unknown and no one has been arrested as yet, and Kweza says that she mentioned that the rising taxi violence in the area is concerning because you'd remember that in Johannesburg CBD, it was a shooting as well where it involved taxi associations. And she mentioned that they will leave no stone unturned to solve this case. They are following all leads to find the suspects. And also the Witwatersrand African Taxi Association, WATA, we managed to engage with them as well, and they are calling for government to intervene and address the taxi war with agency. WATA spokesperson Hamilton Lovu mentioned that for the past 10 years, they've been living like this, living in fear, and they've tried to engage with the government to solve this issue. She even mentioned that they wrote an email to the president and ministers to intervene, but nothing has been done. And he mentioned that they will put everything, they will allow the police to investigate, and they will allow the police to investigate and update them later.
Now, let's talk about the taxi violence, because, I mean, that means that's a struggle and a battle for taxi turf, right, in terms of these turf wars. I understand that people have an interest in wanting to control more than they have, but this issues of taxi violence is such an ongoing issue. What is your sense in terms of why is it that nobody's able to stop it?
Yes, this taxi violence is such an ongoing issue, and the police have mentioned that they have encouraged rather community members to support the police with the investigations and come forward, because when we tried to engage with some of the community members, they were afraid, saying that they fear for their lives. So the police, they've encouraged them to come up and help the police with the investigations.
All right. Anything else? I mean, clearly the response in terms of community must have been one of absolute shock. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, the community members, they were shocked. They are still shocked, and we even tried to engage with them now, and they've mentioned that because they use taxis every day to travel to their different destinations. One of them, who lives near where the incident happened, mentioned that she could have been involved in the crossfire, and she has a daughter, and she mentioned that this taxi war it's concerning, especially in the area, because they use taxis each and every day. So the community members are shocked, and they fear for their lives. Some of them didn't even want to speak to the media because they fear for their lives.
What about, in terms of the actual incident of the people dying? I mean, how much do we know about those that actually did the shooting and what's happened to them?
Well, the police are still investigating, but they've mentioned that they will update us once they have new information. But now what we know is that 3 people have been shot and killed, and they've mentioned that the shooters were using a white car. They didn't describe the car, but the model of the car, but they've mentioned that they will investigate this matter and update the media and the community once they have something tangible.
Okay, do you have any further information that you'd like to share?
No, there's nothing. Thank you so much.
Let's leave it at that. Lerato Makola, the SABC News reporter, covering that story, that terrible story in Mafolo in Soweto, where 3 men shot dead in a case of murder, clearly, but again, very linked now to the ongoing issues of taxi violence, which is really affecting so many people in our country. Right, another issue that we'll pick up on is what was said earlier on around the South Africa's and the ANC Deputy President Paul Mashatile and his points at a breakfast right after this.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
So while the battle and the debate regarding where does the GNU go from here goes on, the ANC's Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, well, he's been busy delivering a keynote address at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation Legacy Breakfast in Johannesburg earlier today. Now, 2 things he said reflects again to all the things we've been speaking about. Firstly, he made the point about a meeting of the ANC later today.
We are meeting today at 10 o'clock as leaders of the ANC to decide on the way forward, because a government that does not have a budget is no government. In fact, if you don't have a budget, then it's over. So we must have a budget. Otherwise, what kind of government is this? What are we going to do? We've already missed the 1st of April, because that's when the budget must kick in. So we pushed it back to the 1st of May, just to give parties a bit of time to see, is there something else we can do? But we are not married to VAT as a lifetime thing. It's really just to cross this bridge. We are meeting today.
Okay, and then the next point, the point about the DA. And I touched on it earlier, but listen to every word he said here.
Minister Steenhuisen, if you don't vote for this budget, really the ball is in your court. You are defining yourself outside the GNU if you don't vote for this budget. They nevertheless went and did not vote for it. But I can see some of them are working today. They are still working as ministers. They are going around. I would be ashamed to do that. Because where does the budget come from? You run to work as a minister. You have not voted for a budget, but you think it's okay. No, you're going to work. So I'm not sure what they are thinking. But as I said, the top 7 is meeting at 10 o'clock to decide. It's not for me to decide. We will discuss and see. But I know that Helen Zille was saying this weekend, oh no, they are committed to the GNU. And my response was, vote for the budget. Others, you go into the government to do what? So we are there now. I guess by this evening you'll get the results of the meeting of the top 7 and the NWC.
And at key point, I'd be ashamed to continue working after voting against the budget. A message to the DA. Right, let's see if I can pick out some of the voice notes that we've got, and clearly a lot of it links to the issue of the DA and that alliance, right?
Afternoon, Ashraf. I think this is the opportunity for the alliance to mend its relations. This thing of the A not voting for with the ANC is now an opportunity for the alliance partners to work together for the common good of the people of South Africa, so that the DA can go out of the alliance, MK and AFF can become part of the GNU. I think that is what the SACP always wanted, and this is the opportunity to do just that. This is Mtura in Philippi, Cape Town.
Right, and there's more. There's another one which responds directly to Mashatile.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Yeah, quite interesting the comments that Paul Mashatile makes. He is probably competing with Fikile Mbalula for opening up his mouth when he actually doesn't know what he's talking about. But you know what? The state that this country is in is directly attributed to the ANC. And most of the ANC's leadership, including Paul Mashatile, is under suspicion of corruption and things like that. So to say that the DA ministers should be embarrassed to show their faces, Paul Mashatile, should be embarrassed to even open up his mouth in public and to speak against anyone in this country. Mark from Cape Town.
Mark, I have a sense many people, seriously, would be nodding in approval of what you said. You're going to get others who disagree. I do say one thing. Your point about himself and Fikile Mbalula, there's a time to talk and there's a time to not say a word, be diplomatic. And maybe this was the time to be saying less and let the decision get taken. So I pronounce on the decision before the decision gets taken. Think about that. Okay, let's get the news headlines. Here's Kolofelo.
Thanks, Ashraf. In the headlines, the Sawa Minister of Electricity, Kgosian Tshwaramo says the rising cost of energy generation and production by Eskom for the past 20 years is one of the contributing factors to electricity tariff increases. Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Trade, Industry and Competition is visiting the South African Bureau of Standards headquarters in Pretoria as part of their oversight work. Minister Parks Tau has launched an investigation into corruption and maladministration at the state-owned enterprise. And Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso say they are recalling their ambassadors from Algeria. This follows the downing of a Malian drone by the Algerian military. Details at 5 with Greg House.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg, queuing towards Crown Interchange, and Christian de Wet Road southbound in Radiokorp is slow moving towards Rinyani Avenue. In KZN, the N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg has a stationary vehicle before Market Road exit, and Bayhead Road is slow moving through Bayhead. In Cape Town, the N1 inbound has a truck rush reported at Okavango Road. Main Road outbound in Observatory is slow moving towards the N2 highway, and Voortrekker Road eastbound slow moving through Maitland. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Tumi, you're going to start with cricket, right?
Yes, I am. Heinrich Klaasen was the major omission on the Cricket South Africa contracted player list announced today. Klaasen is arguably the most sought-after white ball batter in the world currently. He's on a close to 50 million rand contract with the Indian Premier League team Sunrisers Hyderabad. And the 33-year-old is also contracted to Durban Super Giants in the Betway SA20 and Seattle Orcas at Major League Cricket in the United States. Meanwhile, batter Harry Brook has been named England's white ball captain to replace Jos Buttler, who stepped down after England were knocked out of the Champions Trophy in February. Brook will take charge in both one-day internationals and T20s, ending speculation that England could split the captaincy for the two formats. In football, Orlando Pirates coach Jose Rivero says that they are going to fight until the end in the Betway Premiership, CAF Champions League and the Nedbank Cup. Now, Bucks reduced the gap between them and log leaders Mamelodi Sundowns in the domestic league down to 12 points with 3 games in hand. This is after they 1-0 win over Polokwane City on Saturday. They also play the Guyana semi-final against Marumo Gallants on Sunday.
Yeah, I think nobody can question that we're not trying in each and every game. I mean, we are not giving up in any competition. We want to win, no matter what happens, no matter what the opponents do. We're going to try to be at the level that we must be in each and every game, and everything until the numbers, the mathematics, maths tell us that you cannot continue going up. We will try until the end, until the last day if it's possible. So we knew that today we were about, and we played already a final, and it's the same for the remaining games. It's going to be the same because we know how difficult it is to be at the top in this league. And but again, we're going to try our best till the end.
Not forgetting that they are going to compete in the CAF Champions League against MC Alger in the quarterfinal, the second leg quarterfinal, and that match is going to be live on SABC2 from 6 p.m. And also the clash between Mamelodi Sundowns and EST is going to be on SABC1. Meanwhile, TS Galaxy coach Adnan Beganovic says that his main target this season is to return the team to a CAF Interclub competition. The Rockets are third on the Betway Premiership table, just a point behind Stellenbosch FC.
Because I saw my team have a strength, have a quality to be at least on top 8 spot. And after 13 or 14 unbeaten games, I say now we need to change our goal to put a little bit high. But it's not point to stay on one place and try it. And we are survive, and that's it. It's for us. It's season finished. No, I say not. I can't accept that. I want to try to push to reach our dreams. Our dreams now it's some CAF competition.
Then elsewhere, Liverpool captain Virgil van Dijk says that there has been progress in talks over a new deal to keep him at Anfield with his contract expiring in the summer. The 33-year-old is one of 3 high-profile Liverpool players to be nearing the end of their deals, with Mohamed Salah and Trent Alexander-Arnold also yet to sign extensions. Then in tennis, the Charleston Open Women's Tennis Tournament has committed to paying players equal prize money as compared to the men's event on the same level from next year. The WTA 500 tournament said that its purse for the 2026 edition will be increased to match ATP 500 events, which typically offer more than $2 million in prize money. The move comes after the event, which handed out a little more than $1 million, that's around 19 million rand in prize money this year, extended its title partnership with Credit One Bank through 2031. Finally, in golf, Vijay Singh has pulled out of this week's Masters tournament because of injury. The Masters did not give clarity or more details in terms of this injury for the 62-year-old. However, it is the first time the former champion is not at Augusta National since making his debut in 1994. I'll have more on other sports in the next hour.
But I want to ask you, so you gave that cricket team, there's Heinrich Larsson, your lead story, not in the squad. Why?
Yeah, so what we know right now is that Cricket South Africa says they're still currently talking with him with regards to ironing things out, because remember, right now we've moved into an era where players are able to turn down national contracts because they want to be more flexible in terms of competing in the different leagues. And I did say that he's very sought after. I mean, he's competing in the IPL, he's part of the Durban Super Giants, Betway SA20, and also Seattle Ockers at the Major League Cricket in the United States. So I mean, being contracted by Cricket South Africa, you are able to compete in other leagues. It's just that you need to have that clause that says you can go out there. Now they have introduced the hybrid section of things where certain players are contracted for certain tournaments.
What happened to the days where you play for one club and one province and one country in one country against other countries? No, gone.
It's gone.
Bye. More sport in an hour.
The price of milk may be going up, but with Outsurance, you could be saving on your car insurance premiums. Like Irfan, who saves 411 Rand a month on his 2012 Ford Figo 1.4.
For a while, I've been looking for ways to save money, and within 10 minutes, I was signed up with him. I'm saving 411 Rand a month. Outsurance helping me save money.
Switch and save today. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754.
With Outsurance, when you look at it, it sounds too good to be true, but it's good. It's true.
Have you heard about the legendary Out bonus? After 3 consecutive years of not claiming, you'll get 10% of your paid premiums back in cash. Isn't it time you got something out of your insurance? SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
April is Freedom Month, a month to reflect, celebrate, and move forward. SAFM is bringing you powerful stories, insightful debates, and voices that shape our nation. Stay tuned to SAFM, where freedom, history, and the future meet. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Tell you what, this morning we heard that the Rand weakened against the US dollar and weakened against the British pound. And yeah, there's volatility. We know that, right? Let's get the news of other things with Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, you've got news local and global, naturally, but also we start with the yearly trading results from Sirius.
Yeah, from Sirius afternoon to you and to the listeners. Remember, these guys, they own and operate industrial parks and flexible workspaces in Germany and the UK. The guys saw their rent rollover going up by 12.8% because of strong organic growth and asset acquisitions, coupled with strong demand. Occupancy also improved, but their share price fell by 5%. And when it comes to the markets, we opened down 5%, but managed to recover most of those losses. And we know that, Ashraf, after heavy losses last week, as market participants had to absorb the scope of the tariff announcement and potential consequences for global trade, markets entered the week being the edge, watching closely for updates on global retaliation and political developments. And seemingly there are no signs that Trump will back away from his sweeping tariff plans. But later we just got a report that the guy might give all these people 90 days pause. And markets see a 63% chance that the U.S. Central Bank could cut rates as soon as May, even though Friday we had the Fed chair saying that they are not in a hurry to cut rates. And the market meltdown initially, continued as it was, and bond yields were tanking around the world as investors were taking cover amid equity rout, and oil prices dropped, including metals and coffee, as the escalating trade war, Ashraf, between US and China triggered more worries over demand for raw materials. And we saw Brent crude down almost 4% at $66 a barrel. And after falling to a 3-week low earlier in the session, gold recovered as it is a traditional safe haven play. Now it's flat at 3,036, but platinum is up 2.3% at 922. As I said earlier, reports that Trump is considering a pause, a 90-day pause. That at least has managed to give us some hope that we might end up with a positive day. And the rand tanked 1.6% against the US dollar, is now 19.39, 24.75 against the pound, and 21.14 against the euro.
There we are. Lots to consider from all of that. Makwe Masilela from Makwe Fund Managers. We'll do it again tomorrow. What it means is very, very shortly we're going to take your calls. Not quite yet, but we'll take them. But before that, there's some important sound bites from the IFP, which we'll play after this.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
So, as we know, the ANC has been having the NWC meeting, and we'll see what comes out of that later on. But in the meantime, the IFP briefed the media earlier today on the outcomes of their NEC meeting. And the IFP leader, Vilenkosi Klabisa, amongst other things, well, naturally could not avoid the conversation about the state of the party, the state of the country, and the budget and the GNU. So he spoke about that first, that particular role of the GNU and the link of the IFP into the GNU, but used the phrase about carrying bags. Listen to what he said.
Observed leaders who, despite the incredibly complicated difficulties South Africa faces, being absolutely convinced that only themselves understand how South Africa works. And it is only them that have the solution on how best to tackle all of South Africa's complexities. This is simply unfortunate. This disinformation campaign on social media must be corrected. And we want to this afternoon to take you through our motivation for supporting the budget and why we continue to support the work of the GNU. The IFP's identity in the GNU remains fully intact. We are not in the GNU to carry the bags of the ANC or the DA bags. We were there to conform to the views of one party or another. We have our own policy agenda and our own way of doing things. The IFP entered the 2024 elections accepting that it was the most crucial elections since the dawn of democracy. Our country stood on the brink of becoming a failed state, and our economy had been faltering and ailing. It is against this kind of background that we knew that the outcomes of 29 May 2024 would have a far-reaching impact affecting generations to come. Realizing that our collective future is at stake, the IFP asked the people of South Africa to partner with us to secure the best possible future. We entered the election believing that it was time to put South Africa first. We pledged that a vote for the IFP in 2024 on both the national and provincial ballots will strengthen the voice of integrity in the incoming government. As part of the current government of national unity, we indeed remain that voice of reason. We are indeed the voice of integrity, and our voice is indeed one that brings sensible, constructive solutions to the table. The reality is that South Africa's economy has stagnated over the past many years, and billions have been lost over these years to disinvestment. The disastrous mismanagement of state-owned entities and corruption have scared off investors. We are therefore relying on diminishing pool of resources to fund an increasing pool of needs. This increasing pool of need include the salaries of civil servants, increasing social grants, free government services such as water and electricity, free housing, and other services.
And then he touched on naturally the issue of the budget and this important key aspect of it all, which is the issue of VAT.
The alternative would have been further borrowing. This, however, is unsustainable in the long term, as the debt services cost are already at a staggering 425 billion rand. The IFP remains anti-further borrowing. Had government chosen to borrow more money instead of adjusting revenue resources, it would have placed an unsustainable debt burden on future generations. The IFP believes that we need to be frank with South Africans. What is most needed now is a good dose of honesty about the economy, about the dire situation of our people, about the dire situation our people face, and why the IFP support the 0.5% VAT as a last-ditch interim solution. The IFP is anti-VAT increases. This remains our position. And while this VAT increase is not desirable, we support this budget under prevailing circumstances and with conditions. The first of such is that the VAT increase must be temporary and must be done away with as soon as more viable economic income streams are secured. As we support the budget, we remain committed to accountability for effective and transparent fiscal management. It is clear that we need to tighten the loopholes. One such loophole is the 800 billion that is not currently being collected by SARS. Everything must be done to ensure SARS is capacitated to collect these billions owed to the fiscus.
Okay, lots to consider in terms of what that's the IFP position, rather. I wonder what you make of that, right? But what it does mean is it's time for your calls, because I want to get a sense of, I know you have your fingers on the pulse, so what do you think about the big issues that impact the national pulse today?
EFC is live this Thursday. From the wilds of Reunion Island and the ancient lands of Zimbabwe, two raging bulls meet for a heavyweight title clash as Elvis Moyo takes on Anthony Morel. Plus Fahis Jacobs and Sibusiso Sovendile fight for bantamweight gold. EFC 122, live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
And we're going to have more around the GNU story because it's such a big issue. Of course, it dominated the headlines of last week, but it's not going to go away until the issue settles down, if in fact it will, right? So later on, just after 5, we'll get an update from the SABC News political journalist Ntebo Mokobo giving us that story in terms of the various meetings and comments taking place today all around the issue of, the GNU and the budget. But let's get to you, right? Bra Moro, you've got an opinion. Go for it.
Thank you, sir. How are you, Natasha?
I'm very good indeed. Leave the mister, just Ashraf.
I will try my best to be polite.
I hope you succeed.
Firstly,
yeah.
Thank you. Which country in Africa, or especially South Africa, did America govern South Africa?
Did America govern South Africa? Is what you're asking?
Yeah.
No.
During the slavery era,
No.
did America enslave South Africa?
No.
So why do we have to stress over the the taxes being imposed on South Africa? Ghana, where I come from, the very same thing. Almost many countries in Africa, America has consistently been supporting us. Our leaders just mismanage our various countries or the continent. We have AU. That is even supposed to at least maybe fund the fight against certain disease in the continent, HIV, malaria, etc. But we don't get any financial benefit from AU. So if today United States under Donald Trump has seen total mess in his own country and is cutting aid to us, surely we have to embrace it. We have Africa Intercontinental Free Trade that has its secretariat located in Ghana. To date, we are not making any positive impact from that secretariat. We are not trading among our very own self. Maybe this is the right opportunity for Africa to embrace ourselves and see that Ghana has gold, we have cocoa. South Africa probably has maybe coffee, or probably we have rooibos tea. We can trade in. Bring your gold, come take rooibos. Zimbabwe have probably copper or diamond. Bring it for salt. You know, this kind of trade is about time we fall into that.
Bramoro, okay, let's leave it at that. I think the point you make at the end is very important. So the question is, why are we not doing that already? I mean, you mentioned the free trade agreement. I certainly was at the Inter-Africa Free Trade conference in Cairo last year, I think it was, and I was moderating there. And again, this call that there has to be a call that Africans must do more business together with each other. And we're not doing it, which is ridiculous, right? But on the issue of the USA, we must be concerned. I have to be sober about it, because in the short term, it does have an impact on our country. You can't just whisk it away and say, who cares? It really does matter, okay? On the other hand, your point about maybe this will be the catalyst for us to rethink things completely. In fact, Michael Jordan, who I interviewed last week, the former banker from FNB, made the point to say maybe it's about time we start looking at more agreements, trade agreements with countries like China. So that could well happen. And once that happens, the USA may not come back. On the other hand, the Americans didn't colonize South Africa, but I don't think they supported South Africa. In fact, they're one of the last countries that were happy with the dismantling of apartheid. Just go back to their relationship with South Africa during the sanction busting era. That's another whole conversation. Khotso in Midrand, go for it. Hi.
Yeah, afternoon, Ashraf.
Yeah, afternoon, indeed.
Yeah, it's just unfortunately, as much as the ANC is supposed to look into the far left, because the coalition, or say the GNU if you want, which they have with the DA, is no longer working, it's no longer feasible. Look, the IFP, you cannot call it a political party. IFP is one of the parties which we know in history, in the politics of this country. A lot of people died under the IFP. Young people now, more especially in KwaZulu-Natal, have been trained by this IFP to become your Ingabi, to start to kill for their survival, while the very same young people are the people who, in actual sense, were supposed to be the human capital of this country. But IFP, instead of it, they became what I can call them, they were part of the devil.
Can we move on to the present tense? Can we move to the present? Because I'm just worried about time. Yes, there's been lots of accusations about the IFP collaborating with government at that time, but what about now?
No. Now, still, the IFP has lost a lot of numbers. It doesn't have any numbers anymore as we are speaking. Currently, go and check it as we are speaking. Now, IFP failed to even convene a conference. So it tells you that young people, they are enough about this party, which says we have killed people in the name of the party. But it's just unfortunate our media is not fair enough to us to say this is not a political party. This thing killed a lot of people. But
we can't say it's not a political party if it fights an election. That's how you determine a political party. If they're a registered political party, then they fight an election. If you not take them to the IEC to say, well, you're not a political party. They are a political party, But fine, I think you've made your point. Whether you think they're a credible party is another story. At this point in time, they do have a significant say in the GNU. You can't deny that either at this point in time. Right, Mtobisi in Vryheid. Go for it.
Greetings
to you. Thanks for connecting.
I'm so disappointed at the position of the IFP. Firstly, I was disappointed when they joined the GNU. Secondly, I'm disappointed at their current position right now. The reason why I'm disappointed is because I believe the fact that you have people who voted for them into power, then eventually they became part of the government. But the position that they are taking is going to affect the people who actually voted them into power. And right now, Hlabisa is lying. He's saying that he's supporting this position because it is a temporary measure. There's no such a thing. Once a decision is made on the VAT, there's no backtracking on the decision. So I'm very, very disappointed in the IFP. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you so much for that point. Right, let's get to some of the voice notes now, and again, we do have, as always, thought-provoking positions. By the way, do you work in a it could be family, or you could work as a colleague with someone. Are you in a situation where you have a completely different view to could be your husband, your wife, your life partner, regarding the GNU, and how does that play out? I'd love to know.
Afternoon, Ashraf and SA from listeners. I just want to know, why is the DA and the RAND so emotionally engaged with each other? Because we are being told that when the DA leaves the GNU, the RAND is gonna plunder, and then we're gonna become like Zimbabwe when the DA leave the GNU. Why is that, Ashraf? Buta here from Pretoria.
Thanks, Buta. So I'm not too sure what you mean. I mean, yes, I heard what you said. Why they're so engaged, but there's been some talk if they leave that the RAND will plummet. Yeah, I mean, there's been that speculation, and I think the issue of the business one is an interesting one about business people, business leaders, who they are. It's a bit unnamed at the moment. Who are these business leaders who've told the ANC and the DA you cannot leave each other? You have to be partners, chommies. I'd like to know more about that, who they are, right?
Good evening, Ashraf. This is Agmatebola. Listening to Paul Mashatile, the Deputy President, it is so clear that DA doesn't want this country to go forward. If I was a DA voter, now I was going to regret my vote, because they seem like they want everything to fail in this country. So DA, they must count themselves out from joining. This is Agmatebola.
When you say they want everything to fail, are you saying the DA wants everything to fail? I don't know if I necessarily agree with you. I don't necessarily agree with their policies or all of that, but where did they say they want everything to fail?
Good evening, Ashraf. This is Agmatebola.
Okay, wait, we've just done that one. Let's get another one quickly before we get to the news.
Ashraf, good afternoon. It's Bumso for Motorful in KZN. And let me put this issue to bed. The DA, irrespective of whether or not they agree with the implementation of the budget, they need to continue being part of the GNU, because us as the constituency who put them there, we put them there to make sure that when decisions that go against us end up being passed, they need to make sure that they don't get worse for the constituency. And that approach, in fact, it goes for every other party. Otherwise, if you go and sit in the opposition bench, you're not going to change anything. And the other leg of it is that you may as well, while you're in the GNU, just join up with the ANC and become one party. If that's not going to happen, finish. Thank you.
You think that's really going to happen? The ANC and the DA forming one party as opposed to what they have now, which is differing parties, and they work a way to work together. Lots to consider. We'll talk more GNU, by the way, after 5 o'clock. Let's get the news now. Here's Greg House.
Thank you, Ashraf. In this news update, RAND continues to weaken and ambassadors recalled from Algeria. Good day to you. The RAND has continued to weaken further against major currencies amid an ongoing sell-off in the financial markets triggered by U.S. tariffs. The currency fell sharply against the U.S. dollar to 19 Rand 41 cents. The local unit briefly plummeted to a record low of 25 Rand against the British pound early in the day. Analysts say the RAND is also pressured by tensions within the GNU over the budget. Patrick Matidi is with Aluwani Capital Partners.
The rand is particularly weak as compared to its other emerging market currency peers when compared to the dollar. So the rand has weakened the most, I guess, compared to the other emerging markets. And we believe there are three things that are playing against the rand. Obviously, as with other currencies, the U.S. tariffs is one factor. But secondly, we think internally, the GNU instability is another factor that is weighing against the rand.
The rising cost of energy generation and production by Eskom over the past 20 years is one of the contributing factors to electricity tariff hikes. That's according to the Minister of Electricity and Energy, Jose Nsoromokgopa, in a written reply to a parliamentary question. He says in 2014, an Eskom customer using around 800 kilowatt hours per month of electricity paid more than 1,000 rand. However, by last year, the same consumption cost escalated to just under 3,000 rand. Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Trade, Industry and Competition is visiting the headquarters of the SA Bureau of Standards in Pretoria as part of their oversight work. Minister Parks Tau has launched a probe into corruption and maladministration at the SOE. DAMP Tobias Chance.
We started getting emails from whistleblowers revealing some very concerning information about what was happening. This led to a series of letters and requests to the minister to investigate. Investigations had been taking place, but they were internal investigations. And the problem with internal investigations is that it always leads to a cover-up. People that should be investigated are the ones doing the investigation. Eventually, TSU Protection Services was appointed, I think in February, to conduct an independent investigation, and that is underway. Here today is certainly not to cause any disruption or cause any more trouble. It's really just to draw the public's attention to the fact that the problems are not going away.
Please note the following story contains details that may offend sensitive listeners, including children. Some residents of Kimberley in the Northern Cape are demanding the immediate arrest of a pit bull owner that mauled a 10-year-old girl last week. She was admitted to hospital after the dog attack, which left her without an eye, ripped skin and missing bones. The call was made during a march led by the Moral Regeneration Movement to hand over a petition at the local police station. The movement's Fatima Malo.
The community has decided that by within 7 days, if there's no response, we will have a second follow-up march, and of which that march we don't promise that it will be as friendly and that it will be as peaceful as it is today, because many community members are angry and they want these dogs to be removed.
Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso say they're recalling their ambassadors from Algeria. This follows the downing of a Malian drone by the Algerian military. A strongly worded statement from Mali's foreign ministry challenged Algeria's explanation that the unmanned surveillance aircraft had violated its airspace. The BBC's Chris Ewoko has more.
In a statement, the three Sahel countries condemned the shooting down of the surveillance drone, describing it as an irresponsible act by the Algerian regime. Mali said that it would file a complaint with international bodies. The Algerian military shot down the drone last week near the southern border town of Tinzaouatin, a community believed to be a stronghold of Tuareg separatists opposed to the junta in Bamako. Mali regularly accuses Algeria of giving shelter to Tuareg armed groups on the two countries' shared border. Algiers has denied the allegation.
The top story is that the rand has continued to weaken further against major currencies. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khos.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Sundowns ladies star retires from football and appointed assistant coach. Mapaka receives first Proteas contract, and it's all about rising stars at the SA Swimming Championships. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, in Pretoria, the N1 northbound queuing towards the R21 highway, and Eskom-Pahleli Drive northbound has delays towards Moot Street. In KZN, Umgeni Road westbound slow moving through Springfield Park, and the M7 westbound has a stationary truck reported before Belleville Road exit. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound is slow moving towards the R300 interchange, and the N1 inbound has a crash reported before Eustonburg exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
WAFCON preparations continue as African champions Banyana Banyana meet again with the Scorchers in a thrilling pitch battle. This is the international friendly. Experience the beauty of African women's football. South Africa versus Malawi. This Tuesday, 8 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus, SABC2, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the
April is Freedom Month, a month to reflect, celebrate, and move forward. SAFM is bringing you powerful stories, insightful debates, and voices that shape our nation. Stay tuned to SAFM, where freedom, history, and the future meet. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So, you heard that story about the pit bull attack on a 10-year-old girl, the horrific story in the news. We'll talk about that in about 10 minutes' time or so. Just look out for that. I don't like the story, but we do need to cover it. But let's talk about the other story that you either like or you dislike, the issue of the GNU. It's part of our lexicon. It's not going to go away. We don't think so. Well, maybe. Who knows, right? So we thought let's get a recap of some of the key issues that have happened and developed regarding the GNU and the key partners that make up the GNU over the last, 24, 48, 72 hours. With me is the SABC News politics journalist, Ntebo Mokobo. Ntebo, I appreciate your time here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon. They are expected to meet now. The ANC and the DA, they are expected to meet. The ANC NWC was meeting. The meeting started at around 11 this morning, and it's still continuing, we are told. And immediately after that, then a decision will then be taken out of that meeting to say, let's go and meet with the DA in terms of how do they want to define themselves. Are they still wanting to define themselves within the context of the GNU, or they want to define themselves outside of the GNU? So for now, all parties will meet, especially the main parties, the ANC and the DA, will meet and chart a way forward in terms of if the DA is still going to participate in this GNU, or if the ANC still has the appetite to have the DA as its key ally or its key partner in the GNU.
Now, you may have, certainly been aware of the pronouncements of the ANC's deputy president and the deputy president of the country making pronouncements about the DA that effectively, they'd be embarrassed to come to be part of the GNU if they didn't vote for the budget like they've done, right? What do you make of that statement, and how much currency does that hold?
Well, I think reality is now dawning on the ANC, because initially some people were saying politically and ideologically the ANC and the DA are just worlds apart. There is no way in which the two parties can agree. If you look at even during the build up to these elections, to the 2024 elections that gave birth to this GNU, at some point, the DA, for instance, was saying that branded the ANC as a corrupt organization. The ANC, on the other hand, branded the DA as a racist political party that is all about championing the cause of white people and in particular the rich. And of course, the DA, the ANC saying it's a racist party, and the DA, on the other hand, saying the ANC is corrupt and its president should be arrested and investigated. So those parties, they didn't really see eye to eye. And I think it will be foolhardy of South Africans to say the ANC and the DA, it's something that South Africans wanted after the elections, or when they voted in the 2024 elections. This, for a lack of a better word, it's a business project. It's a project of business in South Africa. For a lack of a better word, it's like a product or a project of the market forces. So the two parties, they don't see eye to eye ideologically and politically, and that's why they are always at loggerheads when it comes to promulgating some of the laws. The NHI, the DA doesn't really want the NHI. They don't want the affirmative action. They're just worlds apart. And this, some people are saying it's a marriage it's a rocky relationship that the ANC and the DA are having in this GNU.
All right. Having said that, I mean, they are part of it. They put it together. For all intents and purposes, they are the glue of the GNU for the better part of like 10 months or so anyway, right? What is your understanding about the various plays that is pushing to ensure that no matter how much they argue publicly, the DA and the ANC cannot split from the GNU?
Yes, but that's what business wanted at some point. As I said, I mean, the two parties ideologically they differ, politically they differ, but business wanted the DA to work with the ANC because they didn't want parties like the EFF, parties like the ANC, I mean the MK party, working with the ANC. You would recall that, I mean, the Moonshoot Pact. It was all about the DA dislodging the ANC from power. But that didn't work, and ultimately it was tapered down into something called the multi-party charter. And that multi-party charter didn't really work. And when it didn't work, then people decided that maybe the ANC could work better with the DA. And ultimately we have the GNU with the ANC and the DA as the key partners in the GNU with the exclusion. And there was an insistence. I mean, the people insisted that that must exclude the EFF, that must exclude the MK party. And again, you recall that, I mean, despite the fact that some people in the ANC really wanted the GNU to work with the DA, I mean, to work with other parties like the EFF, even MK party, we are told that there was a dominant faction in the ANC that wanted the MK party not to be part of the GNU or to work with the ANC in the EFF. So that dominant faction had its day and won. And of course, we ultimately ended up with the DA and the ANC working together with other small parties that some people are saying they just hangers on this ride. They don't really have an effective voice in the GNU.
All right. When we talk about business, approaching both the ANC and the DA over the weekend, I mean, who are these business people? Do they have names?
Well, they have names, but they can't really give away their names because they will feel that they will be compromised. Looking at, if say Ashraf Garda is one of those guys who say the ANC and the DA must work, we start looking at what is Ashraf Garda really gaining from this setup. Does he have some contracts with government? Does he have some contracts with other state institutions? So they don't really want to give their name. But I mean, if you look at the conduct and the posture of business in South Africa, they would want this GNU to run its 5 years.
But then let me flip it around the other way. I mean, there are organizations like Business Leadership SA, Business Unity, and they play an important role, including in the B20. So they're very aligned to government, if not a party, right? And then you get the BBC, the Black Business Council, and there are many others, right? I mean, have they pronounced on what their positions are regarding the GNU officially?
Well, what business? I mean, business like a Business Unity South Africa, they would want to see this thing working. They would want to see the GNU working. Business Leadership South Africa would want to see this thing working. Only maybe some pockets in the BBC that would want to say this thing is not working. Let's rather have maybe the EFF and the MK party being part of the GNU. But mainly business people, they want to have their investment really secure. They see this. I mean, if you look even at the letter that was written to the chief whip of the ANC, I mean, at some point they said that in a way, Mdumiseni Ntuli was not really happy at the way the letter was crafted to say that the business believed that the ANC working with the DA, the future of the country is a bit secured. They're saying that some of the projects, some of the agreements that were made around 2001 while the ANC was in majority. But now it's like strange that they're saying that now if the DA pulls out, then there's going to be a problem for South Africa. The future will look bleak. They said that on its own is really undermining on the part of the ANC.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to share in terms of what you've heard, what you're aware of, or what's likely to happen in the next 24 hours or so?
Well, what we're hearing is that the GNU will continue. There's no way in which they will have to work together. They need to force this thing to work. If it doesn't work, then business will be very disappointed. I mean, the market will be. When the GNU was set up, I mean, even President Cyril Ramaphosa and everyone said this will run its full term, and everyone is fighting, even in the ANC and WC. People who believe in this GNU, with the exclusion of the EFF. Remember, the exclusion of the EFF has caused some ructions, especially in the ANC alliance, where the SACP said the ANC sold out. If this thing fails, then that would have been a serious, blow to the prosperity of South Africa. That's how some people see it, and they say they have to fight and make sure that this thing exists and this thing sees it full term.
All right, let's leave it at that. Ntshebo Mokobo, SABC News politics journalist. And yes, this story is going to be part of our headlines and deadlines for the next few days at least, and of course beyond it, right? Whoever coined that phrase GNU, did they realize it's going to be part of our lives, our every word that we speak every single day? Well, now you know it, isn't it? Let's talk about pit bulls. Yeah, that's a big issue. It's going to evoke a response. I know that right after this.
CFI, a global leader in online trading, is now in South Africa. Access 15,000 plus instruments, currencies, stocks, metals, crypto CFDs, indices, futures, and more on world-class platforms. Enjoy zero pip spreads, no commission fees, and 24/7 support for confident trading. Visit CFI.trade for a secure, transparent trading experience. Don't miss the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda, Tuesdays at 16:45. Proudly sponsored by CFI, CFI Financial, an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
EFC is live this Thursday. From the wilds of Reunion Island and the ancient lands of Zimbabwe, two raging bulls meet for a heavyweight title clash as Elvis Moyo takes on Anthony Morel. Plus Fahis Jacobs and Sibusiso Sovendile fight for bantamweight gold. EFC 122, live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, let's talk about this very, very disturbing story about a pit bull attack, right? Kimberley residents around the Galeshewe region, they're calling for the owner of a pit bull that attacked a 10-year-old girl last week to be arrested. And they marched today to the Witdam police station in Galeshewe. And they handed over a petition calling for the removal of all pit bulls across the township. Let's get the perspective of all of the march and more from Reverend Dr. Fatima Malo, the chairperson of Sanarela in the Northern Cape, right? And I understand that you led the march, Reverend Malo. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Give us firstly a perspective of what actually happened.
Okay. On the 2nd of April, 2025, we had a horrific incident where a 10-year-old girl who is named Ria, we name her Ria, to protect her, was brutally attacked by a pit bull, causing severe damage to her face, her skull, and to her hand as well. Now, the face, she lost an eye, she lost a cheekbone, and part of her bottom lip, and also some veins and muscles from her hand. So the child was attacked by a pit bull in her street by her neighbor's dog. So now the child is still in ICU, recovering, but several reconstructive surgeries will be needed to assist the child. So we took it up as a community, as civil society, to march to the family and also to the owners of the dog, because to date, a case has been opened on Friday, but no arrest has been made as yet. So we marched to the owner of the dog to go and see the premises itself, whether it's a safe premises, whether it's a safe space for the dog to be hosted in that space. And we concluded, based on the evidence that we saw, that the yard on its own is not a safe space for the dog, nor even for the community, because the fence was not reinforced of the owner of the dog. And now the child is suffering, and the owners of the dog are not taking accountability. They're claiming that their dog is well trained, whereas the dog was not even on a leash when the dog attacked the child.
Yeah, what can you tell us about the actual attack? I mean, how much do you know about what actually happened? Meaning, you got the child, there are two houses, so there's neighbors, there's a child, there's a pit bull in the next door place. How did they get into contact with each other? What actually happened?
The child was playing outside the yard in the street, and then the owner, the lady, or the girlfriend of the owner of the dog, called the child to her house, requesting that the child must come and play with her daughter, seeing that she needs to walk someone halfway, and she didn't want to leave her daughter alone. But the child did not question, because it's an elderly person who's calling her for assistance. The child went, and then the child went into the yard. First thing apparently that the child did was to ask the friend, "Do you have a dog?" And then this child of the owner said, "No, the dog is not here, it's taken away." Whereas now it was a deception mode from the friend. We understand kids can be kids, you understand. And then they went into the yard, she sat on the stoop, and then the friend decided that it's not good for them to sit on the stoop. Rather, they must go to the back to go and get some chairs, of which these chairs were kept at the back where the dog actually stays, where they're keeping the dog. And then she sent in this Rhea into the cage to go and get the chairs, only to find that the dog is loose, and then the dog attacked the child. And then now, unfortunately, there was no elderly. The children started screaming, and people from the street came to assist.
Sure. What a terrible story. Yeah. And I mean, I'm going to read. I'm reading this, and I want to just caution people listening to this description that I read. It comes from the girl's mother. That's Kelebamang Pitswamang, right? And she says, "The flesh of my child was falling. The pit bull removed her eye. She doesn't have an eye now. The bones on her face are broken. The doctors say they can't see some of her bones. Some are missing. They can't see them on the scan. They don't know if the dog ate them or what happened to them."
Yeah.
I mean, end quote. I mean, just to imagine what a horrible, horrible, horrible story. Now let's get this. Let's go back to the issue. So these are neighbors. Why would the child not have known that the neighbor has a dog, and in this case a pit bull, if they were neighbors?
The family recently moved in about a month ago into that street, so they were not really used to the entire street or the people in the street. You understand? So it's possible that the child didn't know, because she was yet to get to know or to make friends in the street, because it's just nearly a month that they moved into the area.
Okay, I get that. I mean, some may question separately, so why would you even go into their home in the first place? But that's another conversation completely, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can commit a crime, even if you know or you don't know. But now to go back to the end, you're saying, so this is what's happened, that the community is very aware, including the neighbor, that it actually was the neighbor's dog, right?
Yes.
I mean, is that being questioned? Has that been? That means what I'm saying. The owners of the dog, have they admitted that it's their dog?
Yes, they admitted, and they also allowed for the SPCA to remove both dogs from the premises.
Okay, they have. Now your march then is demanding what?
Our march was demanding that, seeing that it's not the first incident in Kimberley that we are having where people are brutally attacked by pit bulls who are unmanaged. You understand? Because like I said, from what we saw of the premises of the owner of the dog, the yard itself was not safe, because even the owner mentioned and confessed that, yes, sometimes the dog would bite the fence and then go to the street, and some people will have to bring it back. So that on its own tells us that there's a great aspect of negligence towards the dog. So our demand was that we want all pit bulls in the area, in the community of Galeshewe, to be removed, because it's not the first incident and it's not the last, not only for the safety of the community members, but also for the safety of the owners as well, because we've had several cases where the dogs attacked its own owners. Which is
I mean, there's been many stories about, pit bulls. I mean, I must tell you, I'm personally terrified of them. There's no way I'm going to get close to them, no matter what, really. But it does question the point over the years to say why are they allowed to continue being seen as domestic dogs as opposed to, say, police dogs, for example. I don't know much about the breeds, but I'm making the point, right? But you now, to go back to the issue of the arrest, then you were also calling. Did I get it right? You were calling on the police to make an arrest.
Yes.
Is that arrest who in this case?
Arrest the owners of the dog for negligence.
Okay. And you're saying they've not been able to do so, although they know it's next door to the other people, so it's not difficult to find, right?
Yes, they haven't yet done any arrest. We were also basing our march on, if you can remember correctly, in Gqeberha in 2022, there was a march that was made by the Sizwe Kupela Foundation, where about 139,926 community members had signed the petition, which was accepted by the then Minister of Police, which was Honorable Bheki Cele. It was also signed by the Minister of Agriculture. It was also signed by the Minister of by the Minister in the Presidency, Mondli Ngumbele, who signed the petition and accepted the petition, and then those bylaws were implemented. You understand? It was also signed by the Minister of Health, Dr. Joe Pasha. You understand? So we wanted those laws to be implemented. You understand? Because it was accepted by higher authorities, and yet still to date, we are still having pit bulls in our communities, which tells us that somewhere, somehow, our sub-officials, as much as they're working hard and everything, but somewhere, somehow, somebody's not doing their job.
Okay, let's leave it at that. It's a very disturbing story, and you certainly have brought attention to it, you and the community that have marched against, owners who are being negligent of dogs, of really dogs that can terrorize, and they do just that. Reverend Dr. Fatima Malo, chairperson of Sanarela in the Northern Cape, on a march in that region of Galeshewe, that Kimberley region, because of so many dogs. Well, in this case, you have one pit bull that attacked a 10-year-old girl. And that description is something I don't even want to repeat. Let's talk about you. Let me just pick out, here we are. Here's a comment from you.
Afternoon, Azra. Afternoon, listeners again. This is Patrick from Soweto. The issue of peoples, it touches my heart. It's really clear that we are failing because we don't have strong leadership. We don't have strong leadership, and we don't have political will. These things, even though we can march about these peoples, we are fighting a losing battle because we don't have leadership here. Thank you, Patrick Soweto.
Okay, there's more on pit bulls, I can tell you now. Well, let me put it this way to you as a listener. Are you an owner of a pit bull terrier? Or alternatively, do you live in a community where you know others own pit bulls? And what do you feel about it? So in both cases, if you're an owner, what do you feel about the fact that most people dislike them passionately? And if you are not the owner, but you live in the area, what do you feel about the fact that you're either cool about it, like that's fine, or you are terrified of them, like I am, just so you know. 5:30, here's the news headlines with Greg House.
Quick look at the headlines of this half hour. The rand has continued to weaken further against major currencies. US stock markets have fallen more than 3% on opening. And the Western Cape Education Ministers announced a near 6% budget increase compared to last year. A full update at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 northbound in Midrand queuing towards Samrand Road, the N3 southbound in Edenville as a stationary vehicle near Modderfontein Road, Zierfontein Avenue northbound in Kloekop has a crash near Berg River Drive in Pretoria. Eskampa Drive northbound has delays towards Moot Street and Daspoort Tunnel queuing at the tunnel. In KZN, the N3 westbound has a stationary truck near Market Road, the N3 westbound queuing towards Pavilion Shopping Centre exit, the M7 westbound has a stationary truck before the Bellville Road exit, and Umgeni Road westbound slow moving through Springfield Park. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound has a crash after Durban Road, the R300 southbound queuing towards Stellenbosch Arterial Road, the M5 northbound has heavy traffic towards the N1 Kuburg interchange, and the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound has a stationary vehicle before Hospital Bend. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Okay, news about a Mamelodi Sundowns player who's retiring. And as I say that, I think half the country's like, which player's retiring? It's from the ladies' team.
Yeah, I was about to say, Mamelodi Sundowns ladies forward Rhoda Mulaudzi has retired from football. This is after 14 years with the Tshwane side. Mulaudzi has been appointed the second assistant coach at Banyana Bastille in the Hollywood Bet Super League under the leadership of interim head coach Godfrey Sapula and first assistant coach Agnes Nkosi. Meanwhile, Golden Arrows coach Manqoba Mngqithi says that KZN teams will be poorer with one less club should Royal AM's membership be cancelled. Mngqithi has always been vocal about the growing number of top-flight outfits in the province and sees the pending exit as a huge loss. Now, Royal AM will learn their fate on Thursday when the Board of Governors, represented by all PSL clubs, vote on the recommendation by the Exco to terminate the status of a team that has been embroiled in controversy.
I think it's just unfortunate, and I don't think we have control in that. And sometimes on things that I don't have control on, I just accept fate, because the reality is it was always nice to have so many teams in the province, and it could have been even nicer with Durban City coming into the PSL when we still have so many teams, because that's the only possibility and a better chance for KZN teams to even win the championship one day, because the traveling of these coastal teams is always the biggest challenge. Because if you look at how many teams are based in Gauteng, it always poses a lot of difficulty for these teams, and most of these teams do not even have the same level of sponsorship. So when we've got a lot of games that are played in and around KZN, it gives a little bit of a breather to use the grant and to use whatever little sponsorship you have to be able to sustain yourself and be able to even get one or two players that can make you to do well. And it's unfortunate when you lose one the way we are most likely going to lose one.
Elsewhere, Southampton have parted ways with manager Ivan Juric following their relegation to the Sky Bet Championship. Juric leaves after the Saints' relegation was confirmed yesterday, just lasting 108 days in charge and losing 12 out of 14 top-flight games. Now, Simon Rusk will take over as Southampton's interim manager, with Adam Lallana named as his assistant. In cricket, Gwena Maphaka is one of three players who have received their first Proteas contract in the Cricket South Africa's 18-man national central contract list. Fast bowler Lazard Williams and spin all-rounder Senuran Mutusami has also received Proteas contracts for the first time, which will run from the 1st of June 2025 until the 31st of May 2026. Heinrich Klaasen is still in negotiations with CSA about his future in international cricket. Last year, Klaasen only signed a white ball contract, which allowed him to be available for T20 franchise leagues around the world. And David Miller and Rassie van der Dussen have signed hybrid contracts that will allow the two batters to participate in specific agreed bilateral tours and ICC events. Meanwhile, the Momentum Multiplier Titans have appointed Ravish Gobind as their new head coach on a 3-year contract. In swimming, it's all about rising stars at this week's SA Senior National Swimming Championships in Gqeberha, with notable absentees of icons Tatiana Smith and Chad le Clos. Smith retired from the sport, while le Clos is taking an extended break to recover from injury. This will be for the first time in 20 years that he won't be competing, although he will be on the pool deck offering encouragement to those who are. In golf, Rory McIlroy is looking to claim his first major since the 2014 PGA Championship and complete a career Grand Slam when he competes at the Masters this week. The 35-year-old feels he is more complete, or he is a more complete player now than at any other stage of his career. Now, McIlroy has been in contention several times at the Masters, but seems to be hampered by at least one poor round each week, most memorably back in 2011. And finally, Nigeria have expressed their interest to bid for the 2030 Commonwealth Games. They lost a bid to host the 2014 Commonwealth Games to Glasgow, but now they're still waiting, obviously, for the green light from the country, or the country's heads of states. And Nigeria last hosted a major multi-sport event, the African Games, in 2003 in Abuja. On that note, it is a wrap from my side. I'll be back again from 7 till 8.
Who are you speaking to?
I am chatting to the team manager of Hollywood Athletics Club. This is after two of the athletes won at the Two Oceans this past weekend. And then also we're going to be looking back at the F1 at the Japan Grand Prix, what happened this past weekend.
And did you say Hollywood Athletics Club?
Yes.
So is that the name of the club from Hollywood, or is that the sponsor's name?
It's the sponsor's name, but yeah, it is the club.
I just thought somebody from Hollywood, but like, my goodness, we've got actors and actresses running. Where they've got time for all of that, but there we are. Right, catch to me 7 to 8, right?
Yeah, 7 to 8 on Top
Every
Sport.
night until further notice. Let's put it that way, so
Yeah.
people know that. Yeah.
With that said,
from Engutu to Durban, twins born with one dream, Maskandi greatness, millions, fame and family. Will money tear them apart or unite them? Brand new telenovela, Amalanga Wafani, starts April 2025, weekdays at 6:30 on SABC 1.
April is Freedom Month, a month to reflect, celebrate, and move forward. SAFM is bringing you powerful stories, insightful debates, and voices that shape our nation. Stay tuned to SAFM, where freedom, history, and the future meet. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
All right, let's. In fact, we're gonna get to your calls. Not quite now, just now, but I can't do much without getting Jimmy Moya, especially on a day when there's a huge focus on our currency. So, Jimmy, really, can I guess what you're going to talk about?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. I have more than enough to talk about on the show today, and our show is only going to get busier. And this is because everything's moving. Everything is in probably the most volatile state we've seen in 5 years. I remember a couple of weeks ago when you asked about the Champions League final in the budget speech and whether or not that was the big highlight of the year, and I said that was the big highlight. Boy, was I wrong. Can't get any busier than what we're going through at the moment, and I fear that we are only at the beginning of what we could potentially be in for. Give you a bit of context, the rand is currently at 19 rand 61 cents against the US dollar. The last time we were around this territory was around May of 2023, so the whole of 2024 we didn't get into that range, and we are now back nearing all-time highs. If you remember, those all-time highs were around 19 rand 92. We're currently at 19 rand 60. So I'm quite concerned there, but even more concerned about the fact that the British pound hit 25 rand for the first time today in history. So markets very sensitive at the moment, to say the least. The gold price has moved quite a bit as well, moving from, I'd say, if we look at just today's moves, moving from around $3,056 a fine ounce to around $2,980 where it is now. So lots of concern happening in the markets. Markets are trying to digest everything that's going on, and amidst all of this, we still have a couple of other things we're going to look at on the show when we come back a little later on. We're going to be taking a look at the conversation around the tariffs, but I want to look specifically from a South African perspective and looking at the potential response that South Africa could have to the tariffs. I've got a conversation with the International Trade and Administration Commission. This is the conversation I promised last week that I would try and arrange, and obviously with everything that's gone on between South Africa and the United States, South Africa has to have some form of response, or even if we don't have a response, that in itself is a response. We know that China's come out with a response citing reciprocal tariffs there immediately. We know that Canada's discussed their response to the US tariffs. So we're going to look and see if we can potentially see what the South African response might look like and where we go to from there. Then we've got a conversation with the team at 91 around the Just Energy Transition loans. As part of all the conflict that's happening, the United States has pulled funding for our Just Energy Transition objectives, and South Africa has kind of turned to to the likes of Germany, the UK, and other countries to finance the just energy transition ambitions that we have. So we're going to look at those implications and see what that means, having lost some of the funding, having lost some of the promises that were guarantees or that were prerequisites to unlocking more funding. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to see if we can make sense of it as well. And then we've got an interesting conversation around the gold price, or particularly gold reserves. Central banks have been stockpiling gold reserves for quite some time. We've known this for a couple of weeks and a couple of months now. For some central banks, it's been for a couple of years. And interestingly enough, South Africa's gold reserves have increased to the tune of some $2 billion in terms of the central bank, and that's as a result of the value of the gold price going up, as well as the amount of gold that we are holding as a country. So I want to look at that, and I want to see where that puts us from a reserve perspective. There are early rumblings or renewed rumblings of the fact that we could be going back into a recession or recession talks, and in that kind of scenario you kind of want to see where we stand, how prepared we are for it, how insulated our economy could potentially be from a growth perspective, and all of those factors. So gold plays quite a big part there, and we're going to take a look at our local reserves from that perspective. And then on Mondays, we started a new feature that we've been swapping out with our personal finance feature. It is the digital dive. It's our tech feature that we've been having. We've just kind of realized that we're switching between the two rather than having them both on the same show. That makes it easier for our listeners, and we're going to do our digital dive today into some travel tips when you are taking your next travel break, in terms of the tech things you need to think about, your checklist from a tech perspective. Before we get to that, let me give you a summary of some of the other movements that have been moving throughout, or market movements throughout the day. The Asian markets having probably one of the worst days that we've seen in recent times. The Shanghai index down 7%, the Nikkei down 7.8%, almost 8% there. The ASX in Sydney down 4%, and the Hong Kong Hang Seng down almost 14%. Yes, 13.75% in the red there. So big moves on Asian markets. European markets weren't any better, with the CAC 40 in France almost 4% down. The DAX and the FTSE both more than 2.5% in the red. The US markets are also in the red at the moment. The S&P down 2%. The Nasdaq down almost 2%, 1.75%. Obviously, US markets are still going to trade, and I will take this as a victory. South African markets finishing in the green. Industrials down 0.77%, but financials up 1.7%, resources up 2.69%, despite the fact that we have softer platinum pricing, softer palladium pricing, softer Brent crude pricing, and softer gold pricing, as I mentioned. So South African markets clearly very resilient. I had an eye on the markets in the early hours of this morning as Asian markets opened up. South African markets kind of opened down as well, looking similar to how the Nasdaq looked, and then out of nowhere we saw some good support levels coming through as our main session took hold at around 9 a.m. So surprisingly good day on our markets. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I know we're still very, very early in this conversation, and we could go in very different directions. But update on currencies before we go. As I said, the rand against the dollar, 1961. One a British pound, 24.95 at the moment, was above 25 rand. Euro, 21 rand 37. One Australian dollar, 11 rand 73. A Bitcoin is less than $80,000 for the first time in a long time. It is at $78,000. You would think that would be a good thing for Bitcoin pricing in rand. Nope, still at 1.5 million because the rand is significantly weaker. So we're going to dig into these movements, try and make sense of it, try and see where there is hope, where to hide, and where we should all be looking at this time. But we're going to do that when we come back a little later on. For now, Ashraf, back to you.
Okay, perfect. You enjoy, if I can call it that, enjoy your show. Money, rates, and all of that combined, and the word GNU somehow dominating as a thread through whatever the markets we talk about. And then, of course, Tumi coming up from 7 to 8, right? But what's important is you come up next.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Okay, let me talk to you. I need to get a sense of the fingers on the pulse. So what does your pulse tell you? Chief in Cape Town, how's it, Chief?
I'm good, my brother. Thank you for taking my call and returning it. Yes, can I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, about the GNU.
Yeah.
It's so strange, you know. No party can claim, the voters last year, they voted, and which resulted to the GNU. Now, this thing there were people from the ANC and its alliances that were not happy about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And Panyaza Lesufi, the Premier of Gauteng, I mean, it's no secret. He stated that he's one of those, the SACP and COSATU. Now, COSATU are saying, voila, look, what has happened? We told you. But how many times has COSATU threatened to pull out of the COSATU and SACP? For many years, even in Zuma's era, they threatened that they want to stand on their own.
Okay, but what's your point out of all of this, Chief? I mean, give me one final point there.
Because of time, yes. Now I'm saying it's so strange because Ramaphosa recently he had high praises for the DA ministers that are doing their job in the GNU. So if the DNC, if the DA were to be out of the GNU, I'm telling you, it's gonna go. If they're gonna take MK and EFF, then it's back to square one.
Okay, it will be back to square one. All right.
Yeah, it will be back to square one.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. We don't. I need to speak to other people as well. I'm sure you'll appreciate that, Chief. Thank you for that comment. So back to square one. If the DA vacates the GNU and the ANC, then is forced to take in the EFF and the MK party. Right, Kandisa in Matlosana. I wonder if you agree. Go for it.
Afternoon, Afwash. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good indeed. Right, what's your point?
Good. Afwash, look, we cannot be ransomed by GA because it's in GNU. I think the NWC today, when they finish the meeting, it will be the end of DA within the GNU.
But do you think you're being held to ransom? Yeah. But
why I'm saying this, Afwash?
Yeah.
We have been tolerating DA they want to bully ANC. It cannot be like that. You see, this country must not be held ransom by DA. They must know their place now. They have to go and sit there as an opposition party because they belong to the opposition party. You see, it cannot be a hide always when you're supposed to implement issues. DA is becoming arrogant.
Well, you see, the DA may all right. The DA may say that ANC is being arrogant. They acting like they run the show, and they don't run the show. They do it in collaboration with other partners, including the DA, which is a major party.
When you are leading, when you are a leader of if a party is leading a GNU, you have to take a decision. At a decision, you may not like them, but you have to take a decision for the sake of the country, not for party politics here.
Okay, got
we
that,
are running
Kandisa.
a country that is struggling.
Well, I mean, all right, I'm going to leave it at that. Kandisa, you made your point. I'm going to leave it at that. You've raised issues, and I think, like the previous caller, many will agree and some will disagree with you, but you made your point. Thank you for that. Let's get to another call, and we're going to change tack. Let's talk about pit bulls. Shata in Cape Town. Hello.
Ashraf, good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, good afternoon. Go for it.
I'm good. My deepest thoughts to the young lady in Khadishu and Kimberley.
True. Horrific story, man, really. Sure.
How horrific.
Terrible. Yeah.
Ashraf, I'm the owner of 2 people.
Okay.
House dogs.
Right.
Ashraf, I always say, if you are not able to handle this breed, do not have this breed. This breed is very energetic. It needs love. It needs and is very territorial. And as in any other dog, the dog instinct is to protect its territory. You know, unfortunately, we have people who are very irresponsible, and they want to go and own this kind of a breed. People, I will never blame a breed But I blame people who are incapable of handling this breed and having this breed in their yards or in their lives.
Yeah, I think it's a very mature call you make. It's like getting a lion in, for example, as your pet. You don't blame the lion. The lion shouldn't be in there in the first place, right, for example. But if you did have that lion, you better know how to handle the lion. Others don't get it, right? I mean, I get your point. Yeah?
You ought to know how to handle the pet.
Yeah.
As well. The pet shouldn't be a risk to the next person. Shouldn't be a risk to the public.
But in a case like this, and you know, and I know, there's been many incidences around pit bulls, and people they've even lost lives, right? They've been so violent. So, do you think in the case like that the owners should be held accountable, like in this case here?
Correct, and there should be regulations that regulate ownership of pit bulls. Some of us are pit bull lovers, and we know how to handle our dogs. I believe there should be regulations, and people should be vetted.
Okay.
There should be some sort of a law or to determine if a person is fit enough to be able to own this kind of a breed.
Okay, point taken. Shatta, just one comment from me. I'm not coming to visit you, just so that you know that. Don't take it personally. Thank you. But I think your call is a very important one. Much appreciated, right? Okay, let's get into other things. There's further comment on pit bulls. Every time I'm in Kimberley visiting, my sister has one pit bull, but she never bites anyone. She is not on a chain, nor enclosed in a backyard. Very playful. Pit bulls must be supervised at all times, from Terence. Terence's thoughts and Shatta's are very similar, I would think.
So I'm very anti-pit bull. I think they need to go, especially in the colored areas. It's like it's a status thing. Colored men spend more money on these damn dogs than they do on their own kids. And these things are just vicious, biting people. I've had my dog torn to bits by a pit bull.
Sure. What do they cost, by the way? It just shows my naivety. I know nuts, man. What do they cost? We're going to change tack now to the other. I suppose the GNU is a pit bull in its own right, isn't it?
Mr. Zulu here in KZN. I just wanted to know why always DA keeps MK. They don't want MK to join GNU. Did they ever MK wanted to join GNU? Did they ever? Did they ever MK wanted to join GNU? No. So why they keep on pressing this matter?
But do you think they are? I think the DA and the MK differ diametrically, and the same with the EFF too, and that is why never the two shall meet, something like that, right?
Hi, Ashraf. It's Shupi from Durban here. On the issue of America and Africa and the other countries, I think, yes, we all agree we need them and they need us. But if we keep on saying we can't do without them, look, we haven't said we don't want to work with them. But if they have said, no, we are no longer giving you help, I think it's now on our leaders to say, what can we do as Africans, as Bramoro was saying? That's the only thing I think we can do, because we have not said no, they have said no. So much as we say we have to work with them, it's our leaders have to find out what best to do now as Africans. I think that's the only way forward.
Well, I think you're right. Let's put it this way. I'm not saying this is a handout, but assuming you're out of work and somebody gives you comes and gives you a handout with food hampers every day, and you're really appreciative. But if that person then tells you, look, this is the most I can afford, that by the end of this month, end of April, I can't give you any more, then in many ways you are galvanized into action, isn't it? And that's what you're saying, that whatever the threats are of the USA, and I know it's not a handout, but I'm just saying South Africa and other African countries must reduce their dependence on the USA. Otherwise, you are sitting ducks, and they then dictate to you our foreign policy, and that can't be allowed to happen, can it?
Haibo Ashraf. ANC has been in power since the dawn of democracy, since 1994. And we only got 1% growth. The country is dying. The PRASA, ESCOM, the hospitals, the education system is falling apart. What the 30 years has shown us is that they can't run the country. And we can't put MK in because we know MK, the big boss there is Jacob Zuma. And he ran the country. He sold the country to the Guptas. I say give the DA a chance, give the GNU a chance. The ANC must work with the GNU. Otherwise, it's always for them. Because what they've shown, they can't run the country. We need the GNU to work. Vince, Cape Town.
Thanks for that, Vince. Well, I mean, here's a thought. Imagine if the GNU collapsed. Seriously. Just think about the departments. Think about the lack of arguments we'll be having right now about the once a week daily debates about policy. But then very importantly, think about the different departments and ministries that are run by the DA. And some of them are run well. I'm not saying all, can't say all, not at all. But imagine that all changes and then replaced by what? Do you run that?
Hi, just my 2 cents on this pit bull story. No other dog, no other type of dog kills people and mauls people at the rate of pit bulls. If pit bulls were a household device like a vacuum cleaner or a bicycle, they'd have been recalled a long time ago. When you think about, when's the last time you heard of a golden retriever causing fatal injuries or mauling a child? The simple fact is pit bulls are dangerous, and the only way forward is to adopt a breed ban like that we see in the UK, or adopt a policy of absolutely strict liability. If your pit bull hurt someone, you go to jail straight up. It doesn't matter what you're doing beforehand. You aren't allowed to have a dog that can hurt people, and people need to be held strictly liable for the consequences of owning these animals.
Well, I think you are spot on, and that's similar to the caller we had earlier on. That you're right. I mean, no breed kills human beings at the rate that pit bulls do. So why are they being regarded in the same breath or spoken in the same breath as the other dogs? They shouldn't be, isn't it? And then what about those that actually become their owners, purchase them? What's their responsibility? I mean, it's like having a gun. Do you go for lessons, or do you just say, well, see how it goes?
Ashraf, JJ Sexbridge. Ashraf, these people who are advocating for the ANC to join with the EFF and them controversies, it's like they're forgetting who them controversies are. It's the same people who brought our economy down and sold us to the Guptas. And the EFF is not afraid to come and eat there with the others who are robbing the country.
The EFF is not afraid. Okay, there we are. Here's another one just on the RAN, setting it all up for the business show coming up just now.
Hi, Ashraf. Andy here. I'm a trader, and I'm watching the RAN weaken before my eyes. It's sitting at 1957 at the moment. I think the worst it was in 1981. So if it breaks 1981, well, I don't know where we're going to go there. Look, I might be wrong, but I think the currency is telling us that there's probably not going to be a GNU as we know it. And will turn around if it remains as it was. It's not a pretty sight, I've got to tell you. Thanks, Ashraf.
Thanks so much. And I tell you what, the pound ran to the pound at over 25 for the first time, I believe, ever, right? Can we link it to the GNU story, or is it the other issues around the world? Let's just put that on pause. I'm not the expert, but perhaps listen to Jimmy Moyaha coming up next, because I think it's important. Just to end the show, here's one from Incognito. I love how Kandisa says Afresh instead of Ashraf. Please correct him. No, I don't have the heart to correct him. I know it sounds like DJ Fresh, right? But no, I don't have the right heart, not the right heart. But anyway, it's spelled ASH like Ash, right? And then RAF, Ashraf, but we say Ashraf. It's in Arabic, Ashraf. So that's what it is. We'll do it again tomorrow with the National Pulse. Let's get the news now. It's 6 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Thank you again, Ashraf. RAN continues to weaken and Polokwane Airport asks for millions from government. Good evening. The rand has continued to weaken further against major currencies amid an ongoing sell-off in the financial markets triggered by U.S. tariffs. The currency fell sharply against the U.S. dollar to 19 Rand 41 cents. The local unit briefly plummeted to a record low of 25 Rand against the British pound earlier in the day. Analysts say the rand is also pressured by tensions within the GNU over the budget. Patrick Matidi